Chapter 12:14. The two leaders of the Order Realm. Oh, there's one that no one knows yet. However, the Guardian of the Celestial Realm was well known in the Void Battlefront. First, everyone knew about the First Realm. Then, they knew about the strongest person in that realm, the one in the open. Then, they knew about the 100 years of war before the 1,000 years of peace. In short, due to various reasons, everyone knew about the Guardian. Some were in awe of him, while others were in awe of him. Knowing that the leader of the Order Realm was here in person, many people hurried out to greet him or join in the fun. They wanted to meet this mysterious champion whose name alone was enough to make their ears ache. The Void Battlefront. This is a dividing line in the void. The power of the world of order completely controls the shallow and deep layers of the void. Theoretically speaking, even the heavenly gods of the primordial beginning wouldn't be able to slip through here quietly. Of course, theoretically speaking, everyone thought that they had completely protected the middle plane and the upper plane. In the end, Yin Nuo stars still saw the destroyed upper plane that was moved by the underworld in the lower plane. God knows how reliable this kind of seal is. At the very least, the transparent barrier in the void gives many people some comfort. Behind the barrier, in a place further away, one could see the layer of dark clouds that was entrenched in the void. It was as if red lightning was shining brightly on it, the death mist of the abyss. It was entrenched in the void. It had been confronting the Order Realm and the Order Barrier here for thousands of years. How much comfort did the Order Barrier give you? It allowed you to feel the calmness of the void again. Is that really the case? Behind the barrier of order stood a huge human city, shining brightly in the darkness like a lighthouse in the night. It was built in the style of the human race. It was different from the style of the gods, but the difference was not by much. This was the front line of the Void Battlefront. This human city was less than 10,000 miles away from the Order Barrier. It had gathered the entire void, the strongest warrior in the demiplane. Just by walking into this huge city floating in the void, one could feel how powerful it was. Once this power was fully activated, perhaps they would not die so miserably under the attack of the underworld. After all, they didn't even have a single primeval heavenly god, while the other party had at least 12 of them. Of course, only he and Hui knew about these things. No one said anything. At this moment, the two of them were standing on the tallest crystal tower in the city. Their vision pierced through the void and saw the abyssal death fog lurking in the void. Their expressions were somewhat grave. Yin Nuoxing looked at the two layers of barriers that completely blocked the abyssal death fog outside. Seeing the powerful gods in the city couldn't help but reveal a relieved expression after entering the city. She couldn't help but reveal a mocking smile. Safety? No. That's all an illusion, the most beautiful. Well, since he wasn't here to talk about such nonsense today, he merely chuckled and mumbled without saying anything. However, the people present weren't ordinary people, so his mumbling was still heard by many people. Immediately, some people's expressions turned ugly. The gods from the pantheon were already used to this. They had all met the Guardian several times, and, coincidentally, they had also met Yin Nuoxing. They knew the relationship between this person and the Guardian, so they didn't get angry when they heard what he said. Instead, they pondered over what he was trying to say. However, this person's appearance today was still as cool as ever. He even came here with an angel in his arms. Ahem, don't worry about him. He must be thinking about something complicated. Now, let's talk about that matter. He waved his hand and said softly. The heavenly god of origin from the pantheon saw that the other's expressions eased slightly, but didn't intend to speak. Someone walked out and said, Lord Hui, do you still remember the Heavenlight Realm in the middle plane? Oh, of course. That's the place Maple and I went to together. At that time, we encountered the abyssal death fog, so we helped him. Why? That matter has something to do with the Heavenlight Realm? We asked doubtfully. That person was slightly taken aback. It has nothing to do with the Heavenlight Realm. Ahem, that sentence is just a primer. There are many special worlds in the middle plane. Just like the Heavenlight Realm, they are huge worlds that are formed by the fusion of dozens to hundreds of worlds. We sent people to track them down. That altar seemed to have fallen out of the void and crashed into a realm. And that realm is a half-destroyed realm. The realm master and all the living beings in that realm have all left. The realm master of that realm had even fallen in a battle 1,000 years ago. Huey's expression turned serious. 1,000 years ago was the Yongdan realm? That realm master was one of the heavenly gods of origin. Yin Nuashing, who was standing at the edge of the crystal tower, heard the voice and asked, "What kind of place is the Yongdan realm?" When you left 1,000 years ago, the Middle Plane happened to have a decisive battle with the abyssal death fog. When the three realms went to help, the Yongdan realm was one of the important battlefields. However, the abyssal death fog invaded too much of that place. Dozens of heavenly gods of origin attacked with all their might, but they couldn't take it back or blow it up. The abyssal death fog occupied that place, but didn't destroy it. Well, that place is still there now. And if I'm not mistaken, it's filled with countless abyssal death fog, right? Yin Nuashing glanced at everyone. The void altar rushed into that place. We've been keeping a constant watch over that place. We haven't seen it come out yet. That person nodded and said, "The Yongdan realm is very special, mainly because it actually exists within the defensive line of the void battlefront." Yin Nuashing was taken aback. "You're keeping it in the back garden?" He nodded awkwardly. "It's really hard to deal with. Forcefully attacking, it would cost us a lot of manpower, and there's not much value in taking it back or destroying it. That realm is located in the depths of the void and is only separated by a thin layer from the void. That piece of void could be peeled off and buried into the void at any time, but there's a sealed energy node in that void. If we use that method, we would definitely be affected, and there would be a loophole in the void seal." "So you left it there and didn't do anything?" Yin Nuashing looked up, her eyes blurred as if she was looking at a bunch of idiots. "There's a special connection between the abyssal death fog. Didn't I emphasize that once? You kept in the back garden and revealed the void coordinates and information of the middle plane to the enemy." "Ha! That's right. I've mentioned another piece of information. The abyssal death fog could even be used as a passageway. Did you forget that? Oh, by the way, if that doesn't hurt you, how about I tell you another piece of information? Just 10 days ago, I found a destroyed middle plane in the lower plane that had been transported by the abyssal death fog in a world in the upper plane." Yin Nuashing's lips curled into a cold smile. "Can I assume that it was this tumor that affected it?" "Aye." Before Yin Nuashing could say anything else, Hui slapped his hand over his mouth and laughed bitterly. Apart from a few people from the realm of the gods, everyone else's face had turned green. This guy was still so merciless when it came to teaching people a lesson, but other than the people from the realm of the gods, no one else could take it. Yin Nuashing did not care about that, but Hui had to. After all, the void battlefront was not controlled by the realm of the gods. Don't say that. Wait for me over there for a while." "What?" "I was just getting to the point." "Yeah." After being pushed a little further away by Hui, Yin Nuashing turned his head to look at Hui, who was approaching with a dry smile. He could not help but frown and turn around, his expression becoming a little cold. It was just a few dozen Empyrean gods. What? What was there for them to be concerned about? This was a war that concerned the survival of the entire Eight Elements realm. Why was there still a need for so-called diplomacy at a time like this? You can't stand telling the truth, and you're here to fight? He had a headache. He knew what Hui was thinking, but he could not stand it all. This was really, he did not know what to say. Yes, Maple is actually quite right. That thing does need to be dealt with. 1,000 years ago, because our forces were quite scattered, we were not able to deal with the abyssal death mist entrenched there. However, it's different this time. With him here, that place is easy to deal with. Anyway, this time we can go take a look at that thing floating in the void and deal with it while we're at it. We chuckled softly. One of the Empyrean gods who was stationed in the first city of the void defense line could not help but frown. He looked at Yin Nuashing, who was standing in the distance, as if he did not care about anything, and said with a somewhat dissatisfied voice, "Lord Guardian of the Realm of Gods, although I know he's your friend, this is a matter of the void defense line. An outsider like him, who just arrived here, has no right to interfere." Clap, clap, clap. Yin Nuashing clapped his hands so hard that the void trembled. He used so much strength that he almost caused the first city's barrier to shake as well. Everyone in the crystal pagoda who heard him felt their souls tremble a little. Hui slapped his face and secretly cursed this guy for being an idiot. Forget Maple. Even he could not stand it. You're saying that I have no right to interfere, right? Yin Nuashing's voice slowly came from afar. He looked up and chuckled a few times. Then he said to Hui, Hui, are these people idiots? Can you really give me a proper understanding of this moment, this 1,000 years, and the next few epochs? What time is it? Yin Nuashing lifted his feet and walked forward. The little angel in his arms was currently floating beside him, wrapped in the elements of destruction. Yin Nuashing looked up at that person and coldly said, this is a war of survival for the entire 8 elements realm. Everyone who is passively or actively involved in this war has the right to speak. I admit that the ruling class can sometimes play a big role, but in this place, it will only get in the way. Maple, forget it. Hui hurriedly covered his mouth before he could say anything else and dragged him away. As he walked, he quickly said to the Empyrean god of origin who had just spoken, I Ching, help me sort out the matter of that void altar and send it to me later. Ow, don't bite me. You're really going to bite me. Everyone, oomph. The person who had just spoken had a gloomy expression as he stared at the direction where Yin Nuashing and Hui had left. After a cold snort, he turned and left. A few others followed him and left with ugly expressions. The Empyrean gods of origin of the realm of gods looked at each other before the one who had spoken shrugged. I have to go prepare information for Lord Hui and Lord Maple. Let's go. Oh, then let's go too. Wait, Lord Hui seemed to have called for us just now. We might have to go together later. Looks like it. Let's go take a look. A few minutes later, Hui dragged Yin Nuashing to a secluded corner. The latter had just steadied himself when he couldn't help but ask, are they the ones who control this void battlefront? Hui shook his head. It belongs to the entire world of order. They control and monitor the abyssal death mist together. The idiot who spoke just now is also from the upper plane. The world they belong to is not much different from the Chanyuan realm. It's just that they don't meet the standards in many aspects and are not considered a realm. Yin Nuashing looked at Hui with a strange expression. After thinking for a moment, she hugged her little angel back into her arms and curled her wings over, as if out of habit. You're crazy. The realm of gods is called a realm because it was created by the great Empyrean gods and has many other powerful aspects. According to the records, the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm were also created, and their creators were not weak. The 2 realms they created were also very powerful, which is why they were called the second and third realms. Aside from them, there is no other continent that can be called a realm. At least, it's impossible in this era. The aura of a realm on his body does not have the aura of an era. Hui was stunned. Aura of an era? Yin Nuashing screamed in her mind, but she put on a dignified expression and said, it's just that there is no remnant of the mutated aura of the previous era. I found that after the void was destroyed, the worlds that were fortunate enough to survive would all have a unique aura. It's very easy to sense it. It's normal that you don't know, because not many worlds were fortunate enough to survive that destructive storm. However, the realm of gods and the other 3 realms are different. They would not be affected by the storm too much, and their powerful laws and order would allow them to maintain their original aura. After saying that, she rolled her eyes in her mind. He was talking nonsense. The so-called aura of an era was the aura of the great cycle of reincarnation. However, it was not easy to explain. She could only use a vague explanation to fool him. Hui scratched his head as if he understood, but did not. A moment later, the space around them rippled faintly. The Empyrean gods of origin from the realm of gods emerged from the space and respectfully clasped their hands at the 2 of them. Hui turned his attention back to the main topic. How was it? How did those annoying fellows react? They were so angry that they even smashed the magic formation in front of the door when they left the tower. Hui thought for a moment and nodded. Put the repair fees on them. Yin Nuashing, ahem, Stop messing around. Do you have the information on Yongdan Realm and its coordinates? Here it is, Lord Hui. The person who had slipped away to retrieve the information appeared from the space and hurriedly handed a crystal ball to Hui, saying, "The last time we recorded the information about the Yongdan Realm was a few hundred years ago. During this period of time, there has been no problem with the surveillance, so there is no need to update it." After saying that, he carefully glanced at Yin Nuoxing and said, "Lord Feng, is the abyssal death mist really that powerful?" Yin Nuoxing glanced at him. This person in charge of information did not seem to be the same person as the first one. This was a young man. Of course, that was on the surface. Heaven knows how long he had lived. He was also an Empyrean god of origin. He was a little unnatural in front of Hui and Yin Nuoxing. He could see that the young man looked at Hui with more admiration than reverence. Perhaps it is even more exaggerated than I thought. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while and said, "There was once a race that was discovered at the edge of the upper plane. It was a communal race. There were hundreds of billions of lives in the entire race. Their thoughts were interconnected. Even if they were separated by the void, isolated by the void, or destroyed by the void to return to the land of nothingness, it was still impossible to stop the exchange of thoughts between this race. Each of their lives was like a small part of a huge life. Are you saying that the abyssal death mist and this race, the abyssal death mist, also have a part of this common race?" Their expressions became serious. If that was the case, wouldn't they be living under the surveillance of the enemy? Because it was difficult to deal with, they put that thing in their back garden for hundreds of years and even sent people to monitor it in case something uncontrollable happened. Perhaps the enemy was also observing them through their surveillance? It's not all a guess. I had this feeling when I was in the world ruins at the edge of the lower plane. So, it's best not to let the abyssal death mist know anything about us. Nothing, not even a little bit. Yin Nuoxing's expression was serious. That is the enemy of the entire 8 elements realm. It is a strange product that destroyed the balance when the void was created. If it falls into the hands of the enemy, it will be the most powerful weapon against the world of order. We have not fully understood all the characteristics of that thing, so it's best to be vigilant and treat it as an enemy that will destroy our entire world. Otherwise, this world of order will really be destroyed. The young man and the others were in awe. They saluted Yin Nuoxing respectfully. "Thank you for your advice. Ahem, now let's talk about the thing you're concerned about." Hui tossed the crystal ball in his hand and grinned. Yin Nuoxing leaned over. Hui pressed the crystal ball on his forehead and said, "I just took a look. Well, it's a little troublesome. That Yongdan realm has long been reduced to a small nest. According to the little bit of information you said, the void altar should not be destroyed. But the situation seems to be a little unexpected. What's wrong? I just contacted my own people who are stationed at that place. They said that they have observed abnormal movements from Yongdan realm. It is very likely that it is related to the void altar that fell into it not long ago." We looked worried. Yin Nuoxing frowned. That thing, he cannot tell what it was. It was ancient from this era or the previous era, or even he did not dare to think further. He only knew that if that thing fell into the hands of the enemy, it might be very bad. Chapter 12:15. The good news is that no matter what, this is still the headquarters of the world of order. 60% of the forces of the world of order are gathered here. The remaining 40% are scattered across the void battlefront. Look, this void blockade battlefront has the abyssal death shroud on one side and the world of order on the other. Turn around. This circle is the world of order, and that black dot is the abyssal death shroud. Looking at it, it makes people want to say we have them surrounded, but in reality, I guess so. He stretched out his hand and pointed at one end of the void. In the distant void, there was the void blockade battlefront that they had set up. And in this huge void encirclement, there was an extremely dark shadow under the light. You guys have been guarding here for hundreds of years. Don't you feel that something is not right? Would a chess piece that charged into the center of the enemy's main camp like a vanguard sit down quietly and do nothing? If it were them, they would be able to carve out a hole in the defense line that was hard to heal and allow the army stationed at the rear to march straight in. It might not be a good idea for them to think about it. Anyway, that darn thing had been holed up here for almost 1,000 years without doing anything. There must be something wrong. I Ching and the others looked at each other and laughed bitterly. They were the only forces left behind by the celestial realm at the void blockade. There were more people who had gone to do more important things. Rather than saying that they were sent here, it was more like a representative of the celestial realm, a role that was responsible for relaying messages from both sides. We could only shake his head helplessly when he saw their expressions. They did not really care about the so-called power or whatnot. They did not particularly think about that from the start, so there were only a few newcomers left in the void blockade First City. The others had gone to do more important things. After all, there were more places to be guarded and sealed in the void. Rather than leaving those forces here to stare blankly at the two barriers, it was better to do something more practical. Quite a number of people in the First City of the void sealing line recognized him. But those few people, the true administrators of the First City, were not too fond of the people of the Divine Realm. They only gave him some face out of consideration for his identity as the strongest person in the First Realm. On the other hand, they were all from the Realm of Order. In such a tense period, he could not do anything to them just because he did not like them. It would not be good for either side. To put it bluntly, it was just those vulgar and disgusting things in the human world that had not touched Maple's bottom line yet. If there really was a conflict one day, he would probably tear down the First City without even needing the Death Abyss Mist to do anything. In any case, it was very troublesome. He's accumulated power for almost 1,000 years, and it's a banquet of this magnitude. TSK. Yin frowned as she had a headache. We want to charge in, but the other side is also waiting for us to come in. With this momentum, they're just short of directly putting up a welcome sign at the entrance. What? Hui scratched his head and looked at him in confusion. Don't you feel it? That restless power is obviously directed at us. There's a restless source of energy buried under there. Yin Nuoxing pointed forward with his chin. No, not at all. Hui, I Ching, and the others shook their heads vigorously. Yin Nuoxing was also puzzled as she looked at it. Anyway, she felt that something was buried under there. She could not say what it was. Perhaps it was the void altar. Oh no, she had thought wrongly for a moment that power belonged to the Death Abyss Mist, and the void that was originally filled with many world light clusters suddenly became empty. Within a certain radius, there were only a few world light clusters floating around randomly. As they went deeper, an uncomfortable thing suddenly appeared in their field of vision. It was a black lump that looked like a world light cluster, but it was much larger than ordinary world light clusters. Moreover, it seemed to have been pieced together a little like the melted ice cream that Yin Nuoxing had seen in the lower plane. However, this piece of world light cluster in front of them was also uneven, but there were no arcs that divided which world light cluster belonged to which world light cluster, which was equivalent to having been half merged. That was the Yongdan realm, which was different from the Heaven Light realm. The latter had been perfectly merged into a huge world light cluster, but the one in front of them, no matter how they looked at it, it seemed like the product of a failed fusion, a half-finished product. So how do we get in? Yin Nuoxing glanced at Hui, then lowered her head to look at the little angel that had obviously woken up long ago but had been pretending to be asleep. Her cheeks couldn't help but twitch. She had been using one of her wings to sweep her back, itching. Anyway, she would never be able to wake up someone who was pretending to be asleep. Speaking of which, why was she pretending to be asleep? How would he know why she was pretending to be asleep? If we casually walk in, I'm afraid that it will cause a riot on the other side. If it's worse, we'll directly attack until this void collapses, and if it's better, we'll probably crush them together with this void into ashes, Hui said casually with his arms crossed. I Ching's face was full of sweat. Master Hui, this void has the energy node of the void seal. If there's a defect, there will be a loophole in this seal. Tisk, our hands and feet are tied. Yin Nuoxing smacked her lips unhappily, and at the same time, she dissipated the energy that had been accumulating in the void beside her. Everyone, Master Feng had just dissipated a cluster of energy. That energy seemed to be able to directly blow up this void into nothingness. Then we can only carefully sneak in? Hui was already used to this, and at this moment, he didn't show any surprise at all. Instead, he calmly talked about their next plan. What happened after that? What happened after that thing fell in? I Ching shook his head. We don't know yet. The void altar crashed into the Yongdan realm yesterday, and immediately caused a huge commotion in the abyss of death mist. We can see that many spawns are rioting inside. Right, there should be a point of view that barely saw the void altar. He thought for a moment, and then took out a few crystal balls from his chest, and quickly checked them with his soul power. In the end, he kept one of them and put the others away. Then, he projected what was recorded in the crystal ball into the void. The black presence was like a black quagmire that kept sinking. It was a quagmire formed by countless abyss of death mist and its spawns. There was no telling how many of them there were, and following the sinking of the quagmire was an altar. It looked like a very common altar, and there was nothing particularly eye-catching about it. However, Yin Nuoxing saw a corner that had a slight impression of it at first glance, and recognized that it was the altar that Spirit Shadow had told her about. The only thing that was different from the one she saw dozens of years later was that the projected altar before her was filled with strange runes and charms that were filled with energy. This was just a still image. The next moment, I Ching made it move. Then, the huge altar fell from the sky like a heavy object. It fell into a lake, creating huge waves. A huge hole was smashed in the Yongpil realm's world barrier. Countless black auras and derivatives turned into waves and were thrown into the void. They were thrown into the void, creating a huge splash in the void. It was not a lake, nor was it a small splash. It was a raging wave that splashed in the void. Countless abyssal death fog and its manifestations were swept into the void and the land of nothingness, disappearing without a trace. From this angle, the void altar indeed seemed to have come from outer space, and then mercilessly smashed into the Yongdan realm, killing countless abyssal death fog manifestations along the way. Whoa! Hui rubbed his chin in deep thought, and a distressed sound came out of his mouth. Yin Nuoxing was also thinking about how to deal with the situation before them. They were all strange beings that had no sense of reason and did not listen to orders. From head to toe, they were exuding a distorted and strange aura. As beings of the world of order, they were as dazzling as the sun at night. To safely enter. There was basically no such thought. Moreover, if they rushed in, they would not be able to see what was going on and would not be able to find where the void altar fell. If they could sneak in, that was impossible. If you want me to accurately cut this Yongdan realm from the void and throw it into the void, that would be fine. Hiss, if you want me to do such a thing. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. Then, he suddenly thought of something and looked at I Ching. Where's that energy node? I Ching was stunned for a second by his sudden question. He hurriedly took out his crystal ball and compared it to the void in front of him for a long time. Yin Nuoxing felt that he should not be able to find it. This void was empty, and the world light orb had been moved to a place far away from the Yongdan realm. Without a reference point or a still picture, how could he find it there? It is a small distance away from the heaven light realm. I Ching raised his hand and pointed to the void. Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned. He took a look at the crystal ball in his hand, and only then did he see a place a little distance away from him. Good heavens, that energy node was right next to Yongdan Jie. If his hand trembled when he was precisely cutting, that place would also be cut off along the way. Yin Nuoxing's face darkened. Why did you put this energy node so close for no reason? Seeing Lord Feng's pale face, their faces shrank. I Ching said softly, Lord Feng, the energy node of the Void Seal, came out on its own after the Void Seal was sealed. It is equivalent to a method of self-stabilization. We did not expect it to stick directly to that place. Otherwise, we would have already moved the Yongdan realm into the void. We definitely would not have let it stay behind our own backs. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, he felt that it made sense, so he did not pursue this matter further. In any case, he just complained. After complaining, he still used his brain to think. It was not that there was no way at all. There was the most direct way. He or Hui would protect that energy node, and then the other person would lead the army to fight this cancer openly. With the two big bosses around, it was guaranteed that they would not lose any manpower. When this plan was carried out, there were two ways to deal with it. The first way was to let Hui protect it, and then they would sweep through it. The second way was to let Hui drag the energy node away. This would not affect the stability of the void seal, and it could even make space for the energy node. Then he would blow up the void. Of course, he was only thinking about this plan. He did not say it out loud. It was easy for him to scare these sunny young men in front of him. The second plan? Oh, there was no second plan. He could not think of any other way, so he might as well just fight it out. Then he said this plan in his mind. Unsurprisingly, except for Hui, who was used to it, I Ching and the others felt their legs go weak and their faces turn pale. Although they were all heavenly gods of origins, the enemy was a scourge of the void that could kill heavenly gods of origins. Just a few of them facing it head-on was not a good idea at all. That, Lord, foam! I Ching was sweating so much that he was about to bleed. He glanced at the Yongdan realm from the corner of his eye. Who knew how many billions of abyssal death mist spawns were hidden in the squirming black folds of the Yongdan realm? He immediately swallowed and said, This is not very good, is it? There's nothing bad about it. Let's do it. Yin Nuoxing carried the characteristics of swift and decisive action. He slapped I Ching and made him stagger. Then he began to wildly gather energy. The little angel, who had been pretending to be asleep, finally could not help but jump up. Hey, did you forget something? My aura can be blocked. Boom! The eternal light that blossomed in the void was incomparably dazzling. It illuminated the entire void. The energy light pillar that was so huge that it could swallow hundreds of thousands of worlds pierced through the silent void. It was like a giant blade that glowed with light. It narrowly brushed past Yongdan realm, taking away 1/10 of the entire realm, their understanding. It stared blankly with its eyes wide open, and its speech was sluggish. I poked you so many times. I touched you for so long. You just let me go with a bang, and then you're gone with a bang. Even Hui was startled. Are we really going to fight? He thought that even if they were going to fight, they would at least give him a heads up. At the very least, there would be a countdown or something. Why did it just happen? Yin Nuoxing's expression was calm. He did not care about the little angel, who was angrily grabbing his hair with both hands. He said calmly, Would you believe me if I said that my hand slipped? Everyone, regardless of whether it was a slip of the hand or not, that super powerful energy attack had already torn apart the piece of the void for a long time. A few seconds later, a monstrous aura of destruction suddenly appeared in the void. That familiar hostile aura hit them in the face, causing their expressions to quickly turn serious and their energy to constantly churn. Forget it. We've already started fighting anyway. Yin Nuoxing clenched his fists until they cracked. He stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. A transparent energy streaked across the void at an infinite speed, completely sealing off the entire Yongdan realm and their location. Then, he gave Hui a thumbs up. Let's go all out. Huey's face darkened. That was your plan from the beginning, right? You're too lazy to think too much. You're a terrible old man, very bad. Anyway, we didn't have any good countermeasures from the beginning. Rather than thinking so much, we might as well just fight. Yin Nuoxing casually waved his hand. Then, do we act according to the plan? I Ching and the others rolled their eyes. No, there was no plan to speak of at all. In their senses, there were tens of thousands of people with huge energy pouncing towards them. A series of thoughts automatically appeared in their minds, causing them to snap out of their daze. They turned their heads and saw an unusually conspicuous black fog rushing towards them. They subconsciously took a deep breath. Now was not the time to think too much. The enemy was already here. I'll move the energy node away. What's the next step? Huey's body flashed with golden light. The guardian's shield and the huge sword that could be used as a door appeared in his hands. The next step, I haven't thought about it yet. Yin Nuashing stuck out his tongue and said with a smile, Buddy, don't joke around. If you really don't have any ideas, I'll twist my head off and use it as a chamber pot for you. Hui rolled his eyes in annoyance. He knew his best friend's temperament very well. He knew that he probably had some bad ideas again. Yin Nuashing shrugged. My idea is you guys move the energy node away. After that, Hui, you sink this Yongdan realm and this void into the void. I'll go in and have a look. Well, as he expected, it was an extremely dangerous idea. However, he was not allowed to object. That guy left his words and rushed out with his little angel. I Ching and the others watched him rush out. Their eyes were filled with worry. His figure was instantly drowned in the death abyss mist. They could not tell him apart at all. A few seconds later, the vanguard that was rushing towards them suddenly self-destructed as if something had gone wrong. Their bodies exploded into clouds of black fog and disappeared. Yin Nuashing's figure emerged from the black fog. He shouted without turning his head. Go! Hui gritted his teeth and rushed out. Let's go. We're going to the energy node. I Ching and the others were stunned. They looked at Lord Maple, who was cutting his way through the death abyss mist. They gritted their teeth and quickly followed Hui. The energy node needed someone to protect it. They could not keep up with the former's pace. They could only wish him all the best. Yin Nuashing was too lazy to think too much. When dealing with these irrational things, it was useless to think too much. The best choice was to directly knock them down, push them back into the void, and kill them in the void. According to his calculations, Hui and the others would need about 2 hours to get rid of the energy node. He only needed to kill and kill in these 2 hours, and then find a void altar. It did not matter even if it took more than 2 hours. After all, he was not afraid of the chaos in the void. When the fight really started, the little angel did not have time to complain. He quickly merged into Yin Nuashing's pair of azure wings. The latter held 2 huge swords that could split the sky and earth and rampaged in the death abyss mist. From time to time, he would send out a flash of extremely bright energy directly into the death abyss mist. When he estimated that he had attracted almost half of the death abyss mist in Yongdan realm, he breathed a sigh of relief. The aggro has been attracted. The rest is left to Hui outside. As for the inside, you lunatic, if you want to die, don't drag me down with you. I just came out to see the world not long ago, and you treat me like this. Are you worthy of me? The little angel, who was hiding in the azure wings, said in a dull voice. He looked at the overwhelming, ugly things rushing towards his face and only felt nauseous. Boom! Then, with a rumble, the disgusting scene disappeared completely. Yin Nuashing casually wiped off the black aura on his hands and swung the 2 swords in his hands in annoyance. Don't worry, I won't die. I can't defeat the primeval god of the underworld, but can I kill these shiny cannon fodders? Sea of people, Pooey, go-see tactics and whatnot. I've never worried about the enemy's numbers. He chuckled softly. The void beside him began to flicker with fluorescent light. Numerous formations of unimaginable size rumbled and appeared from the void under the control of his mind, accompanied by a grand appearance of endless energy. This time, he was completely certain that all of the death mist and manifestations of the abyss in the entire Yongdan realm had been attracted to him. These things drew too much hatred. Hui and the others had just landed at the energy node. When they saw Yin Nuashing's huge movements, they could not help but frown. Then, they gritted their teeth and began to deal with the matter at hand. Old friend, you're messing around again. Chapter 12:16. Don't make it sound like I'm messing around every day. Yin Nuashing could only sigh helplessly in the face of Huey's complaints. His hands were not idle either, but he did not have much to do now. With a wave of his hand, he shifted a spell formation from the left to the right. When he summoned his natal spell formation, he himself turned into a killing machine, killing everything within millions of miles around him. Even someone as powerful as that Qingwat something was had to dodge pathetically under the bombardment of the spell formation. And he had also achieved his goal perfectly, attracting the abyssal death mist of all of Yongdan realm. In his senses, there were innumerable things lunging at him, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. But that did not matter. Those things could not get too close. They were all suppressed far away by his firepower. There was no enemy that could not be taken care of by a group of formations. If there was, then he would add another group. BZZT, BZZE, BZZT. A violent hum wafted from the void. The vibrations from the energy sound wave alone were enough to shatter the forms of the abyssal death mist spawns. One of the 1,000-meter behemoths had half of its body disintegrated into a black shroud in the energy sound wave. As the hum resounded, more and larger spell formations appeared abruptly in the void, all of them brimming with energy and ready for battle. If they were to smash down, the entire Yongdan realm would be buried. Yin Nuoxing waved his left hand and snapped his fingers. Groups of spell formations emerged from the void along with a frenzied energy storm. Not only did he add a single spell formation, he also added another. 3 huge spell formations appeared in some unknown posture, but they looked very neat, and even more so when they rumbled together and burst out with a great deal of energy. At the same time, the enemies were also neatly wiped out. Yin Nuoxing could not help but frown. Just now, he had wanted to give Hui and the others a thumbs up, but now, the enemies that were rushing over from the void were endless like a great waterfall. Almost every moment, there were tens of millions of abyssal death mist derivations rushing out from the void in front of him, and then baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. They were smashed in the face by him. He reckoned that this level was not just the number of Yongdanjia, right? At the energy node, Hui was shocked when he saw the sudden increase in the number of enemies, and hurriedly sped up the movements of his hands. This energy node was about to materialize under his energy disturbance, and when it turned from a conceptual body to a semi-physical existence, he would be able to carry it on his shoulder and drag it away. At that time, he would be able to sink the Yongdan realm into the void. I Ching and the others were still in the mood to watch the skyrocketing battle erupting in front of them even as they stood guard. Their expressions were frozen in the winter, and those who did not know the details would probably think that there were tens of thousands of Empyrean gods of origin bombarding each other. Who would have thought that the protagonists of this battle were an Empyrean god of origin and a bunch of strange things? As he fought, Yin Nuoxing felt that something was not right and stopped. He had stopped for 1 minute and 33 seconds, and by the looks of it, he might continue to stop there. The enemy's strength had suddenly increased, and there seemed to be more tactics between the cannon fodder. Although it was a very simple tactic, it made them come much closer to him. After a while, he might even consider retreating. How about we release the restrictions? Yin Nuoxing said casually, brushing his hanging bangs. Restrictions? What restrictions? The little angel was stunned for a moment, and then it emerged from his azure wings and asked curiously. Then, it looked at the magic circle beside him and could not help but shudder. You're not going to say that. Your magic circle has restrictions, are you? Of course, if we put in too much effort, the energy shockwaves alone would churn the void and the land of nothingness into a puddle. When I fought that thing last time, the land of nothingness probably would not recover for 10 billion years, or perhaps it would never recover at all. We had already destroyed the fundamental laws and a whole bunch of stuff in that place to the point that nothing was left. By the way, who doesn't need to save that thing anymore? The little angel was stunned. But this stalemate is not the way to go. Specks of silver light began to appear on Yin Nuoxing's body again, but it was only a little, but it increased his energy by a lot. 6 divine rings appeared one after another behind him, which meant that he was going to use the power of divine right and divinity. I still don't know if that thing will escape when it falls from the void into the land of nothingness. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I don't want to miss it. So, ants, get out of my way. He shouted softly, and the 6 divine rings expanded a lot. The huge core magic circle of the 3 magic circle groups was arranged into a huge triangle, and there were at least hundreds of billions of magic circles spread out in 3 directions with the triangle as the center. The shining light showed that the many magic circles were gathering all the energy at the center, and then all of it was released in front of them. For example, a ray of light. The energy of an entire world of light was fused into a ray of light. That ray of light was like a silver needle, only millimeters in diameter and a few meters in length. The energy of that ray of light could pierce through the void and even the barrier of the primordial realm. And now, the silver light in front of them was such an aggregation. The huge energy ray was made up of countless tiny energy rays, like the light of the Milky Way. Every tiny ray of light contained an entire galaxy, an entire world. The huge energy ray, made up of this energy ray alone, was enough to restore the void to nothingness. Those abyssal death fog manifestations had disappeared in a thin air even before they came into contact with the energy ray, as if they had suddenly ceased to exist. He let out a scream. When he felt the energy wave, he jumped up. Just as he was about to ask I Ching and the others to turn around, he saw that they had all turned around at the same time with one hand covering their eyes. At that moment, he knew that he was still one step too late. "I'm blind," I Ching murmured and rubbed his eyes. "It's like I saw an entire void crashing into my eyes." Hui laughed bitterly and waved his hand. "You guys step back and take a rest first. Maple's order disintegration is an energy field, an energy domain. You guys are just grazed by the aftermath. At most, you'll be blind for a few minutes." Hui glanced in that direction and quickly turned back to rub his eyes. Maple's order disintegration could be used on anyone in any way. It was a powerful, indiscriminate attack. For example, I Ching and the others were attacked just by looking at it. As for those who were hit directly, they probably didn't even know how they died. Oh, it should be said that they probably didn't even know how they died. Buzz, buzz. A heavy sound reverberated in the entire void. That was the sorrowful sound of order collapsing and the rules being destroyed. Wherever the silver-white energy beam passed, the void would be stirred up. It was like a scar in the void that was burned by flames. Now, the scar was still expanding to the left and right. A few minutes later, when the scar was so big that it could swallow hundreds of world light orbs, the energy of order disintegration disappeared. The black thing that filled the entire heaven light world, it seemed to be almost empty. Even if it wasn't empty, the Yongdan realm had also pierced through it, creating a huge hole in the world barrier. However, there was no void nearby anymore. There wouldn't be water gushing in like a hole in a boat. Instead, the things inside were falling out and were melted by the chaotic state of the void until nothing was left. Hundreds of billions of arrays also melted in the void. This time, Yin Nuashing had the time to give Hui a thumbs up and grinned. Then, he rushed towards the huge hole in the Yongdan realm like a stream of light. "Foam, be careful," Hui whispered. Hui murmured softly. He shook his head and lowered his head to look at the glowing block in his hand. He had almost grasped the energy node and could begin to manifest it. He was almost there. Moving in the void only required a single thought. Yun Nuashing seemed to have rushed into the Yongdan realm like a meteor, but in reality, it was just a method of movement that he had deliberately displayed. In any case, he had rushed in and was stunned. He held the Netherworld Ruins sword in his hand and thought that he would see something when he rushed in. Think about it. This place that was filled with the abyssal death fog would be filled with things. Other than those black, disgusting things that seemed to be born from nightmares, there was nothing else. Well, in fact, that was what he thought. Even if he used the order disintegration directly, he didn't think that he could completely clear out the monsters in the Yongdan realm. He rushed in and was ready to fight. He held his sword with both hands, and there was an unknown energy behind him that was about to release that destructive power. Then he saw an unusually quiet space. Unusual, quiet, and very strange. This was a dark space. Behind him was the huge hole in the world barrier that was chiseled out by the order disintegration. It was now slowly healing. It was very mysterious. Generally speaking, world barriers would not heal by themselves. However, this Yongdan realm was specially made, so there was a possibility that it could heal. Moreover, the speed at which it healed was faster than the void around it. Maybe the Realm Lord had strengthened the world barrier's recovery. There must be something fishy. Which unlucky Realm Lord would put so much effort into repairing the world barrier? In any case, what he saw was a strange galaxy strange. What was even stranger was that there was a planet facing the hole in the world barrier, a huge planet. At a glance, he could see a clear blue ocean, a continuous sea of clouds covering a small hemisphere, and emerald green mountains rising and falling on the ground. The majestic snowy mountains covered in white snow were like ancient ruins that no one had set foot on. Looking down, he could also see the plains dotted with branching rivers, which either flowed into the ocean or formed a lake. He could also see cities, yes, really cities, scattered all over the planet. If his senses were not wrong, there seemed to be a place where life gathered at the bottom of the ocean or in the middle of the ocean. It was not the life of the ocean, but the life on the land here seemed to be the human race as well, and their cities were in the ocean. Looking up, he could see a bright starry sky. This world seemed to have been born not long ago. There were abnormally many stars in the depths of the galaxy that were releasing scorching light. They flickered like a piece of black cloth that was embellished with bright colors. Yin Noashing, oh, he silently put down the sword in his hand and carefully put away the netherworld ruined sword. He was afraid that the slightest swing of the sword would turn the planet below into a pile of dust. This is a little beyond my imagination. The little angel jumped out from his dissipating azure wings. Looking at the boundless planet and the vast and lush starry sky, she was stunned. Did you go to the wrong place? Yin Noashing used his thumb to point at the world barrier that was still healing behind him. This can't be wrong. Unless slap. He rubbed his face that immediately turned red. Well, I'm not dreaming. The little angel. You can even do this to yourself when you're crazy. You. Yin Noashing looked at her with an indescribable expression. She didn't know what she was feeling. She felt awkward, conflicted, and her balls hurt. It was said that the Yongdan realm had been occupied by the abyssal death mist and its derivatives for almost 1,000 years. Moreover, there had been a fierce battle in this place. The Empyrean gods of origin had fought here, and all kinds of laws and order were broken. Coincidentally, the enemy was also in existence that could tear apart laws and order. With such a terrifying group of people fighting here, conservatively speaking, the void here had sunk tens of billions of times, and the void here had been distorted hundreds of thousands of times. Then, there was a mess left behind. A ruined land had been occupied by the abyssal death mist. How could such a scene of peace appear in this world that was completely ruined? There were stars in the sky. All the laws and order were normal. There was no problem with his origin power at all. And most importantly, he had just launched an energy attack that disintegrated order at this place, leaving a huge hole in the world barrier. But it turned out that there was a world full of life behind the hole, and everything looked normal. What the hell? His original idea was that this was a world full of abyssal death mist. A large number of abyssal death mist derivatives were stirring, and even if there was anything, it would only be a pile of wreckage. The wreckage of the starry sky, the wreckage of the stars, and the meteorites and comets flying around. The broken laws revealed an unpleasant presence, and the distorted order made people uncomfortable. The entire starry sky should be filled with strange, dark, and distorted energy that the beings of order could not adapt to. Or it could be filled with all kinds of corpses. The corpses of the abyssal death mist derivatives and the Empyrean gods who had not completely died back then. Then, the entire starry sky would be filled with remnant violent energy. The energy of the Empyrean gods could not find peace for millions of years. The above should be his imagination of this place. Then this Yongdan realm threw a planet full of vitality to him. With his current strength, unless the heavenly god of the origin took action, it was impossible for him to fall into any strange dream. He had just slapped himself, and he was indeed awake. Then the situation in front of him could only be a ghost. I compared the void here with the void outside that you have just destroyed. This is indeed the place we just came from. The laws and order before us are quite normal, suitable for beings of order to survive. The more it spoke, the more awkward it became. Even if you were wrong, I won't be wrong. I was born there, and there will be no problem with my senses, so what he saw before him was real. He quickly buried all those unrealistic fantasies into the void. No matter what, no matter how he thought about it, what he saw before him was real. Even if this place was really occupied by the abyssal death mist for thousands of years, and he had just fought with them, and even launched a huge attack toward this place, but Yinuashing looked like he was about to break down. There was no but. Let's get out of here. It looks weird. This planet full of life is too eye-catching. Let's get out of here first. Yinuashing frowned as he turned around, grabbed the little angel, and dashed towards the hole of the world barrier that had yet to close. The vigilance in his heart made him want to flee first. However, after dashing out for a distance, the planet had already disappeared behind him, and he did not feel that he was approaching the hole at all. We can't get out. Its expression was calm, and its golden eyes showed some complicated information. There's some strange energy flow. It doesn't look like those. It doesn't look like the abyssal death mist. Wait, let me do it. The little angel held Yinuashing in its arms and spread its white wings, bringing the two of them towards the hole in the world barrier at an even faster speed. There was also some strange energy that was analyzing the space around them. Yinuashing looked around with a serious face. After a few minutes, it stopped, a little depressed, and shook its head at Howrun. It still doesn't work. He pondered and nodded slowly. Sure enough, this world that seemed to be full of life was still abnormal. Sometimes, being too normal was abnormal. Moreover, this world that was abnormal in the first place looked so normal. That was even more abnormal. At this time, Yinuashing and the little angel stopped running. They stood in the starry sky and quickly used all kinds of methods to analyze the space, from the outside world to their own bodies, and checked everything. Space normal. Order is normal. Laws are normal. Our souls and spirits are also normal. We are not disturbed. There's no situation where our consciousness is being captured. In short, there is nothing wrong with this place, but we just can't do anything. Speaking of which, there is something wrong with not being able to feel anything wrong, right? Yinuashing knocked on his head with a headache. The last sentence was useless. The little angel shook its head and flew in another direction with Howrun in its arms. Let's go check out the other directions. It's useless. It's probably useless. Things like directions are just illusions that are created for us. If we are really in some kind of illusion, we won't be able to feel ourselves and won't be able to recognize left, right, up, and down. Yinuashing shook its head. The little angel stubbornly tried for a while, and when it found that there was indeed no special change, it lowered its wings in dejection. It could not help but mumble, "You always go to strange places. I've just seen the world. I'm locked in a little dark room again. I don't care. You have to take responsibility," and other strange words. Yinuashing's face was full of tears when he heard them. However, since this operation was indeed because he had rushed in recklessly, he could not get rid of the blame. Wait a moment. Can you still use your void teleportation? It raised its head with a whoosh, its eyes flashing as it asked. Yinuashing was stunned. He squinted his eyes, and some silver and blue light flashed in his eyes. Let me try. After a while, he could not help but feel a little powerless. He shook his head and said, I can still use the power of the void, and I can still sense the void. However, the void seems to have rejected my orders. It's strange. It's the first time I have such a feeling in so many years. To put it bluntly, I can't run out, and the void transmission doesn't work either. The little angel did not know what to do. The two of them looked at each other and sighed at the same time. Really, this void is too ghostly. Just randomly running to a place can lead to ghostly encounters. Last time, at the edge of the lower plane, they accidentally ran into the heavenly god of the underworld. This time, they ran into something even more ghostly in their own territory. They were inexplicably trapped here and could not get out. Yinuashing was still in deep thought. The little angel was still wandering around in the starry sky with him in his arms. It did not give up and kept changing its direction, trying to avoid something and run towards the shrinking hole. But no matter how it tried, it felt like it was still going in circles. No matter how hard it tried, it could not slip out of the place. 2 hours later, the dejected duo sighed again. The little angel rubbed her eyes with one hand. Just as she was about to stop her useless stroll, she looked up and saw a huge planet, a clear blue ocean, a sea of clouds that covered a small hemisphere, and a green mountain range lying on the ground like a sleeping dragon. The majestic snow mountain covered in white snow was like an ancient relic that no one dared to set foot on. Overlooking the panoramic view, she could even see a green plain dotted with branch-like rivers, the planet that they had just left behind, the planet that they saw as soon as they came in. The little angel was so scared that its wings stood up. It was running in the opposite direction just now. It definitely did not go back. But this thing still appeared in front of him. Yun Nuashing touched the head of the little angel and said, "That's why I told you that all this is an illusion. The direction is a lie. However, it's not all useless." Yun Nuashing narrowed his eyes and used his chin to point at the planet below. "At least I know that this place should be some kind of core or something. Since we can't leave, let's go down and have a look." Chapter 12:17. It fell from the starry sky towards the big planet in front of them like a comet. It must be extremely eye-catching to rush into this planet in such a manner. However, Yinuwashing was not worried. The huge power of the rules covering his body was enough to make everyone ignore this comet that suddenly appeared. When he arrived, he and the little angel were observing the world below. As they got closer, the blue sea that covered half of the planet became further and further away, and the cities that dotted the plains below also became clearer. With his eyesight, he could already see the entirety of this side of the planet when he was in the stars, and he could even see the tiny movements of certain people in the cities below. Still, he could only vaguely make out the outlines of the cities. The style here was different from that of the divine realm. There were no large buildings like palaces everywhere, and the larger houses were built out of rocks and some kind of clay that looked like castles. Every city had one, and the smaller ones were simple houses that looked like a mix of pavilions and simple houses. Apart from the grayish-white bricks and wood, the entire city was centered around some large buildings and plazas. It seemed to have developed fairly evenly, and there were no unbalanced areas in the city where the houses were run down, short, and filled with beggars and people who starved to death. Roads of all sizes spread out in all directions from the city to the wilderness. When they passed by rivers and lakes, they would pass through some small villages, or they would directly connect to another city in front of the road. Between the city and the wilderness, there was no city wall, but the villages would build simple fences. But from some small details, Yinuashing felt that these fences had been in disrepair for a long time, and it did not seem like anyone would repair them. It seemed that building fences was just a habit left behind. In short, it looked quite peaceful at first glance. But in reality, who knew that a seemingly beautiful and peaceful world would appear in this godforsaken place? No. The existence of order and the existence of order in this world was enough to raise one's vigilance to the highest level. He wanted to use all kinds of methods to break this illusion. But everything before him was too real. It was so real that he felt as if he had fallen into a dream within a dream. The first dream was of him returning to the Dark Age. Yun Nuashing's rapidly falling body stopped when he was about 10,000 meters away from the ground. The flames around him also disappeared. Out of habit, he used his divine soul and divine right to scan the entire planet. The little angel stood beside him and looked down at what was perhaps the largest city on the planet. She sighed as she looked. So many people, even if they know that this world has long been taken over by the abyssal death shroud, could not help but say that this is really prosperity, liveliness, peace. In your words, this is the most beautiful illusion? Yun Nuashing used a few seconds to scan the situation of the planet. He opened his eyes and said, "If I didn't come here personally, no, even if I came here personally and used my own eyes to see everything in front of me, I feel that it doesn't feel real. He shook his head. Think about it. What are those things outside? Ghosts, ghosts, twisted creations, twisted things at the bottom of nightmares. These things are crowded outside the light of this world. And now, a world that could not be more peaceful is suddenly thrown in front of me. Let alone me, no one would believe it, right? It only makes me feel that this is an even more bizarre creation. Yin Nuashing sighed and scratched his head. Let's not talk about the abyssal death shroud first. Just the disintegration of order that I just unleashed. You saw it penetrate the other side of the light of this world. Even if I attacked the edge of the light, the inside of the light of this world should have become abnormally chaotic. Ordinary worlds should have been torn apart long ago. The energy level of this planet before us is indeed not high, and it is even more impossible to survive that energy field. The little angel's eyes also swept across the world. That gaze was almost fearless. From the plains to the deep sea, and from the ocean to the mountains, she could see that all kinds of life existed in this world. This place seemed to be affected by the rules of the void. The most common race was humans, but there were also other races with distinctive features. However, these races seemed to be similar or basically the same in Yin Nuashing's memory. I think it will be better to plunge into that destructive storm in the void. Yin Nuashing clutched his head in distress. He had also seen the situation of this planet. Many races coexisted, and each race lived in harmony. There was no conflict to speak of. Looking at the entire world, there were not many scars left behind by wars and conflicts. If this was the realm of the gods, where many races coexisted without any defenses, a few groups of people would have already blown their brains out. Forget it, forget it. Let's go down and take a look. Yin Nuashing waved his hand in distress. His figure that was suspended in midair directly landed on the ground. When the two of them really stepped foot on the ground, their souls suddenly trembled violently. The two of them turned around abruptly and looked into the distance with an extremely shocked expression. That should be an area covered by snowy mountains, a place that no one had set foot on, just like an ancient ruin. Was it an illusion? No, he did not believe that it was an illusion. They were already in this realm, and even the slightest movement from their bodies indicated that there was definitely something wrong. But that feeling was like a fleeting glimpse, and it disappeared in an instant. It was so fast that they almost thought that it was an illusion. This world has already sensed that we have entered. It also looked into the distance. After a while, it turned to look at him. Do you want to go and take a look? Yin Nuashing shook his head. No, it's still. We walked in openly like this. Let's see if it will do anything first. If it doesn't, it won't be too late for us to go and take a look at it. As for what it was, he did not know. It was precisely because he did not know that he said it. In that instant, their souls trembled as if they had touched something. It was as if their gazes had suddenly intersected, or as if there was a sudden resonance between two things. At that moment, they had discovered it, and it had also known that they had come. As for whether it was good or bad, only God knew. This world seemed to be never short of legends. The vast world was too complicated for people who had to roar to talk and walk to get around. There were too many unknowns. According to Yin Nuashing's exploration, the life on this planet was scattered all over the planet. They were very widely distributed, but there were two natural barriers that blocked the communication of the people on this planet. This was what he thought after looking at the energy level of this planet. The blue sea and the rolling snowy mountains on the other side were devoid of life. There was not even a trace of life left. They were like ancient relics that no one had ever cared about. These two natural barriers blocked the communication of the people on this planet. Well, this information seemed to be useless. Yin Nuashing changed his clothes slightly. He put on a long golden and white scarf. The place where he landed was in the cold season. The people here called it the season of frost and fog. Although it was cold, the wilderness in front of him was still green, and the forests and jungles looked very lively. It was just that the sun above his head seemed to be going on strike. It was lazily and reluctantly releasing its light to illuminate the world. Right? Speaking of that sun, Yin Nuashing raised his head, put his hand on his forehead, and squinted at the sun. It was not a real sun, but the remains of a big star after it exploded. But the remains were bigger than an ordinary sun after it exploded. Other suns would leave a quivering core that released light, heat, and destructive power after it exploded. But this one had about half of its volume left. The other half had already turned into energy and wind and drifted away in the galaxy. The galaxy around this sun looked empty. There was no trace of a big sun that had exploded here. A secondary sun. The original one had already exploded into pieces, and its energy had all dissipated. It could be judged that this world was probably born after that. It is like a new world that was born in the ruins and wreckage. Well, it sounds a little tragic. The voice of the little angel came out from his white and golden scarf. Yin Nuashing reached out and stroked the scarf and nodded. Its shape was too eye-catching. There was nothing similar to it on this planet. It did not have the cognitive blur function, so it could only hide it and pretend to be, well, an ordinary wanderer. Anyway, there were only a few kinds of excuses. This one was a little more vague and easy to confuse. Well, so what are we doing here? It could not help but whisper. Yin Nuashing pressed his long hair. Except for his long black hair that almost reached his ankles, he did not look much different from the locals. Didn't we come here to look for the altar of nothingness? Who knew that we would see it when we rushed in? This damn scene. It seems that someone has asked us to act. Let's act as much as we want. Let's see who can't stand it first. Act? Well, that's the gist of it. You see, isn't it clear? We rushed into this world, and then were abducted into this inexplicable scene. We are forced to stay here. Isn't that what they want us to do? Yin Nuashing shrugged and sighed. God knows what they want us to do. It thought for a moment and said softly, maybe there is someone who doesn't want us to see something. For example? For example, it was silent for a moment as if it was weighing its words. The miracle of this world? The truth? Or something that someone treasured? For example, someone like you? Yin Nuashing waved the scarf playfully as if it was something that the underworld had painstakingly brewed. In the end, they did not know that it had already been born and had been abducted by him. It paused for a moment and patted the back of his head with the scarf, hanging behind it to show its dissatisfaction. If that's the case, you are the one who abducted me. Well, anyway, this explanation makes sense. If there is really something that someone has carefully arranged here, well, that's what it means. In other words, we have bumped into this someone's defense mechanism. Yin Nuashing hugged the back of his head and walked on the spacious road under the weak sunlight. He had landed directly next to what seemed to be the largest city on the planet. Then, with a stomach full of emotions, he hugged his head and walked further and further away. Now, he was slowly turning back. The most speechless thing was that neither of the two idiots noticed this problem. They did not realize that they were getting further and further away from the city. About 10 minutes later, a person appeared on the road in the vast wilderness and stepped into the city without attracting any attention. Yin Nuashing remembered the name of the city from the voices of the passers-by, Jiguang City. Language problems had never stopped a guy like him who had been wandering in the void. The number of worlds he had seen was at least 8 digits, if not 9, and there were many who were involved. The so-called language was also in the self-records of this world. This planet existed in the light of this world, and at the bottom of the concept layer of the rules of this world, there was information that recorded everything that had happened in this world. A mere language problem was naturally not worth a trip to that place. Anyway, when he entered this place, he was already prepared. Outsiders were very common, due to the lack of city walls and similar inspection facilities. Given that this world was too peaceful, Yin Nuashing felt that it was quite normal to not have these things. As the largest gathering place of life on the plains, Jiguang City was also the closest foothold to the snow-capped mountains. The latter reason made it a place where people who traveled north and south gathered. People who rushed inland from the plains would gather here for various reasons. Among them, 40 to 50% of them came because of the snow-capped mountains, one of the natural barriers mentioned just now. It was located 137 miles north of Jiguang City. If people from all places wanted to go there, they would have to stop here. There were also many people who lived in seclusion, shuttling back and forth here. Those were the other life components that Yin Nuashing had just seen, other races that did not belong to the human race. There was no war in this world, and several races lived in harmony. On the surface, there were a few big races, and some small races lived in seclusion on this planet, aloof from worldly affairs. Even if there was no war on this planet, it was still the same. Thanks to them, there was no lack of people who were dressed abnormally on the road. Yin Nuashing's long windbreaker and long hair were not particularly normal, no matter how one looked at it. Other than his face that could be recognized as a human, and he was wearing human clothes, he was filled with the characteristics of an alien race, no matter how one looked at it. However, as long as he was not too eye-catching, it would not be a problem. After all, there were really many people going in and out, and some of them were even stranger than him. Yin Nuashing suddenly felt something. He took out a small notebook from his pendant, flipped to the latest page, and wrote a sentence at the top. In the 51st era, in a certain year and month, I can't remember clearly. In a certain world of the Void Yongdan realm in the Middle Plane, I successfully mixed in. This is the 10,000th time. I can't remember clearly. The scarf. It looked at him writing this line. If it were not for the fact that it had lost its body, it would have knelt down and held its forehead. Was this guy addicted to sneaking in? He even recorded it. It just vaguely saw that the front of the notebook seemed to have recorded many examples of failure. It seemed that it was because he had tried to mix in and failed, so he suddenly maxed out the skill of disguise. Speaking of which, this guy did not really disguise himself. He just wore a scarf. If it were not for the fact that there were many different races in this world, with his disguise, if he was thrown into the human race, he would be mistaken as a member of another race. Look at his temperament. He did not look like a human. Oh, that's right. This guy was a god. He could not be confused with the human race. After closing the notebook with a bang, Yin Nuashing put it away and whispered, "Why did you suddenly sigh?" A helpless sigh came from the scarf. It was very soft, and only he could hear it. He also used the same voice to ask it, afraid that the passers-by on the street would hear something and think that he was crazy. "Nothing. Well, I'm just a little tired. You can continue your journey in disguise. Don't worry about me," it said sullenly. Yin Nuashing scratched his head and looked at the street that was full of exotic styles. He did not feel uncomfortable at all. After all, it was not the first time he had done something like this. Whether it was in Fengling's life, Quarter Moon's, or Yin Nuashing's life, it was the same. At most, he would glance at other places from the corner of his eyes, and then he would feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity. He knew that this was the strange sense of déjà vu that filled the void. He must have seen similar worlds before, and it should not be just once or twice. The sense of déjà vu this time was a little stronger. There's nothing special to see. Well, the world of mortals, peace and tranquility. I haven't felt it for a long time. The world I live in is not so peaceful, Yin Nuashing said softly. It made a TSK sound and said with a little disdain, "Someone has done other than sleeping on the clouds all day long?" Oh, some time ago, he went to the depths of the void and was half dead before sneaking back. After that, he lay down for a few days. Yin Nuashing's face twitched, but he did not feel embarrassed. He coughed lightly and pretended to look around. Look, those clothes are so different from the style of the realm of the gods. Ugh, I don't want to wear them. While the two people were whispering, a child that looked like an alien suddenly pointed at him excitedly and said to the adults beside him, Uncle, look at that weird big sister. She's talking to her scarf. Don't look. That's a wizard from Nanping. He'll catch you at night to make medicine." Yin Nuashing and the scarf. Although it attracted a little strange attention, it seemed that this kind of strange thing was still within the scope of normal for the people of this world. It was just that Yin Nuashing felt weak all over when he was suddenly told this. He did not know if it was because he was called Big Sister or something else. I think we should hurry up and find some special places, such as... Yin Nuashing waved his hand and swept away the lethargy from just now. He took a deep breath. Such as? I don't know. Let's go and see. In the end, it was still a trip to another world in disguise. Chapter 12:18. The small alley at the corner of the street was the shadowy part of several large buildings. The area surrounded by the buildings was crisscrossed to form a complex, small topography in the city. It was the gathering place of some small creatures living in the dark. Yin Nuashing was just passing by here. He walked around aimlessly and was bored. He was not interested in the buildings. The large buildings that were back to back were not small in scale. They seemed to have been deliberately placed in this area. It seemed to be the center of Juguang City, and it was indeed bustling. The areas in front were indeed bustling, but the shadowy area a short distance away was unusually quiet. It seemed to be isolated from the outside sounds. Someone had even ingeniously placed a few benches in this area. Yin Nuashing looked at the benches and felt that they were somewhat deliberate. They were not placed in some more obvious small places, but in this shadowy corner. It looked very suspicious. Then he sat down and walked for a long distance. Now that his laziness was acting up, someone just happened to give him a chair. What a coincidence. He looked up at the sky in a daze. The building closest to him was a large building with a golden spire. It was different from the other buildings made of gray and white bricks. Its scale was probably the largest in Juguang City. The decorations were just right to show its importance, but it was not as luxurious and ostentatious as the other buildings that were specially designed to show their luxury. It looked like, in the words of the realm of the gods, it was a soul building. It probably had some special purpose. He saw that the sunlight in the sky would intentionally or unintentionally gather on the golden spire of the building. Probably, this was the origin of Juguang City. I'm so lazy, I don't want to move anymore. Yin Nuashing stretched his waist and laid lazily on the stone bench. He swung the scarf around his neck in boredom, which made the scarf spirit a little unhappy. You can rest, but don't shake me. I'm dizzy. Ugh, Yin Nuashing rubbed his eyes. He was a little dizzy. The strength in his body seemed to have been drained. Speaking of which, he felt a little weak half an hour ago. The rules of this world are slowly depriving me of my strength. Is it like boiling a frog in warm water? The scarf spirit was stunned. Why don't I feel anything? Are you okay? Fortunately, it's only warm water. If it were someone else with weaker laws, if they were only gods, they would have been assimilated by this world. If they were at reciprocity, it might be better, but they'll be abnormally weak right now. Yin Nuashing clenched her fists. I'm fine. In about 1,000 years, He deliberated over his words, and the scarf spirit could not help but say, Kill, I'll probably be a little weaker. I'm at the peak of reciprocity after all, and I'm currently restraining all my energy to prevent my powerful laws and causality from distorting this weak world. Otherwise, why would I be so lazy and sleepy? Yin Nuashing stretched lazily again and spoke in a domineering tone that was not domineering at all, causing it to feel awkward. By the way, it felt that the reason he was lazy was purely because the laziness cancer was acting up. This guy probably wanted to sleep again after seeing such peace and tranquility. It was really hard to change one's nature. Even when he went to another world, he still didn't forget to sleep. Well, that's right, so I'll sleep for a while. Help me look after, yawn. Yin Nuashing grabbed a handful of her long hair and covered her eyes to block the weak light reflected. Just as she was about to close her eyes and sleep for a while, she suddenly heard a series of footsteps. She noticed it, but she was too lazy to pay attention to it. However, she could not rest for a while because of the commotion. Her mood became a little bad. Someone can find her in this place. And it's a little girl? The veins on Yin Nuashing's forehead throbbed. She frowned and squeezed out a few strands of her long hair. With her weak vision, she noticed a group of people walking in from the place she had just entered. The leader was a burly man who looked too strong. She felt that if someone hit him with a wooden stick, that person would be rebounded to death. It was clearly the season of frost, but he was only wearing a thin shirt that was 1 or 2 times bigger than normal clothes. The people behind him were all wrapped up tightly, afraid that they would freeze to death in this cold weather. Moreover, the things that this group of people brought Yin Nuashing squinted her eyes slightly. Among the large bags, there was no lack of small tools used in the wilderness. There were also simple assembly tools that could be used to split mountains and rocks. They looked like sharp blades and huge hammers. They were probably tools from this world. This group of people looked like a group of explorers. This place seemed to be a treasure trove for this group of explorers. Suddenly, someone occupied the place that they often used, and the uninvited guest was a weak little girl. Of course, this caused the group of people to be dissatisfied, but it was very strange. They could not show it. The dissatisfaction in their hearts circled around, but before it could appear on the surface, it disappeared. The strange girl had a strange aura around her, and for some reason, it made them unable to get angry. The group of people wanted to put a fierce expression on their faces, but after holding it in for a long time, they could only make a slightly funny expression. The 8-foot-tall, burly man frowned. His subordinates were just ordinary people, so they might not feel anything. However, he really felt the aura of the person in front of him. This person was constantly releasing an aura that made people feel warm and relaxed. It made him let go of the grudges and vigilance in his heart. The burly man scratched his head and waved his hand to stop the group of people. Then, he sat down on the chair opposite Yin Nuashing. He looked at the latter for a while, and then whispered, "Hey, woman, are you the person that little girl Qinglei called? It should be about this time. Where is she?" Yin Nuashing was still closing her eyes and pretending to be asleep. When she heard that there seemed to be a story behind this, her gossipy heart immediately flared up. She became a little more energetic and mumbled a few words to deal with it. Then she asked, "Who knows? So what are we going to do?" "TSK, that little girl is still so irresponsible." The burly man rolled his eyes. He raised his hand, which was the size of a praying mat, and pointed into the distance. He said, "The snow-capped mountains, that holy mountain. Do you understand? If you don't understand, let her tell you in detail. How would I know so much about those troublesome things? You can't be so hasty when doing things. Last time, I didn't find enough people and rushed over recklessly. I almost lost my life there." Yin Nuashing's face darkened. This big walk was really straightforward. It was a typical example of a brain full of muscles. No, that's not right. If it was really full of muscles, she would have punched it by now. However, she was also a little concerned about the burly man's words. From what she could sense, there was no breath of life in that snow-capped mountain, and there were no traces of life left. No life should have visited it for millions of years. However, from what the burly man said, it seemed that they had already been to that place. This was a little interesting. What nonsense are you guys secretly talking about down there? A clear voice came from above. Yin Nuashing and the burly man looked up at the same time and saw a figure appear with her back facing the sunlight from the top of the building. It was a red-haired woman. Her clothes were a little revealing, and there was some light armor around her joints. Her waist-length red hair was tied into a ponytail, and she looked somewhat valiant and formidable. She greeted him from above and jumped down. Her hand, which was wearing a black long glove that looked like a defensive suit, slapped the man's abdomen without hesitation. She could not reach any higher than that. Sorry, I'm a little late." Hey, you expanded the team again. Where did you find people this time? Is there anything special about them?" The woman smiled at everyone when she came down. Then, she curiously looked at Yin Nuashing, who seemed to be asleep, and asked. The burly man was about to complain about her irresponsibility, but when he heard this, he was stunned. His eyes widened, and his face became a little fierce. He glared fiercely at Yin Nuashing. Then, the look in his eyes instantly returned to normal. He put on a strange expression and said, "Isn't she the person you called? I still can't get them to come. You should know that to invite a proper mercenary, even if it's a friend, you need to spend money. As for how much money you need, that's up to them." They gave a price that they couldn't afford, and then they went back empty-handed. Hee. Qinglei laughed as she knocked her little head with her little fist, acting cute. Yin Nuashing and the burly man were speechless. "So, is this little sister? She looks so beautiful. So flat." Qinglei jumped to Yin Nuashing's side, reached out her hand and pressed on his chest, her mouth making a tisk-tsk sound. Yin Nuashing. Why did he feel that this action was a little familiar? Right? It was the action of being heir when she was young. It seemed that he remembered something that he didn't want to recall. The burly man finally couldn't hold it in. Then, he looked at Yin Nuashing and held it again. He said softly, I still want to know who this little girl is. I thought she was someone you called. She's not one of your people? No, I thought she was one of your people. So it seems, then, the whole dark place fell into a dead silence. The burly man patted his chest and guaranteed that if it weren't for the strange aura of this woman of unknown origin, he would have been full of murderous intent by now. That's why I said that this place should be protected by a layer of protection. You didn't listen to me at that time. Now that an outsider came, what did you say? The veins on the burly man's forehead bulged. Didn't we set up a layer of protection at that time? And I paid for it. You haven't given me your share. Mid-level protection spells, 60 gold coins. Hurry up. I'll pay 20 gold coins, and you pay 40 gold coins. Hey, didn't we agree to split it in half? Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, the group of subordinates behind couldn't help but whisper. Boss forgot again. We agreed that Big Sister would do it herself. In the end, Boss paid for it himself. Big Sister forgot that it was 600 days. Don't say it. We'll be thrown out. The red-haired woman and the burly man glared at the subordinates at the same time. All of you shut up. Yin Nuashing finally couldn't sleep because of the noise. She rolled her eyes and pulled down the long hair that covered her eyes. She slowly stood up and stretched. She said, Stop quarreling. You're disturbing my sleep. Yan, I heard you say that you're going to the snow-capped mountain range. I happen to want to go there too. How about we go together? You? The burly man looked at him suspiciously. He looked him up and down and muttered, You look even more delicate than this little girl. The temperature at the snow-capped mountain can freeze ginseng beasts to death. There are also many wild beasts. We're going there to find something. If you want to go there to play, I don't recommend you go there. Big Sister, you want to go too? Okay, let's go together. Jiang Lin and the others are a group of rough men. I was just looking for a Big Sister to talk to. Qing Lei smiled and came over to hug Yin Nuashing's arm and shook it. Hey, don't cause trouble. It's not like you don't know that place. People without strength can't even last a minute in the periphery. Besides, we want to go to the center. We don't have extra space to carry her in. The burly man frowned. Yan, you guys don't need my combat power. Yin Nuashing said lazily and flicked her long hair. Didn't you hear what I said just now? I'm going there to play and see what's going on in that ghostly place. I'm going to play and walk around. This stupid thing is making me nervous. I can't sleep well if I don't go and take a look. Don't worry, I won't take your space, and I'm not interested in what you guys are going to do. I'm probably not interested. It shouldn't be so coincidental. The Scar Spirit felt a headache coming on. This guy had just been in this world for 2 hours, and he couldn't hold it in for 3 hours. He even said that he was going to disguise himself in another world. Damn, his mind had never wandered. But after thinking about it, he agreed. The strangeness of this world made even him feel scared. This time, it didn't seem to be the result of the influence of the abyssal death mist. But the Yangdan realm was also occupied by the abyssal death mist. The only abnormality was probably the strange void altar that crashed into this place a few days ago. But how could a strange altar turn a destroyed world into such a state in just a few days? They didn't know. If there was an answer on this planet, perhaps there was an answer at the place where they felt the palpitation when they landed. But until now, they hadn't felt anything strange. His divine right and soul had swept the snow-covered mountains back and forth a few thousand times, digging 3 feet into the ground, but he couldn't find anything. The brawny man and Qing Lei looked at each other, back and forth, and then glanced at Yin Nuashing. After looking at him for a while, Qing Lei got out of Yin Nuashing's body. The two huddled together and whispered, Is this lady still asleep? That's snow-covered mountains. This is the first time I've heard someone talk about going there to play with such a casual tone. It seems that the grass on the grave of the last person who said this was already 30 feet tall. Yin Nuashing smiled as he listened to the two people's mutterings that were so loud that it echoed in this small place. He didn't say anything and just slowly stretched out his hand. A blue light flashed across his eyes, and a piece of sparkling snowflake appeared in his palm. Soon after, a gust of snow and ice suddenly blew up in this small, dark place. It was just a very weak snow and wind. The energy that he controlled was like pinching small ants to the extent that it wouldn't be enough to crush them to death. That was why he created such a small snowstorm. With just a little more energy, this snowstorm would blow in Jiwang City. The sudden snow and wind made Qing gasp. She quickly hid behind the brawny man to hide from the wind. A small head popped out from behind him. She looked at Yin Nuoxing in a daze, and then saw the snowflake in his hand. She said in shock, "Ice Curse Master?" Yin Nuoxing casually crushed the snowflake in his hand. He opened his hand and blew on the ice crystal fragments in his hand. Those fragments drifted with the wind to everyone's body. They fell on their shoulders, chests, and hair. Then flowers of ice and snow grew out of thin air. "Are you sure that's how you use your power?" The scarf spirit's swaying movement on his back suddenly stiffened. "This is like the use of a street performer. Oh my god. You're a heavenly god of origin, okay? You're using these little tricks here." "Shut up," Yin Nuoxing muttered in a low voice. In the wild, warriors can't find a kitchen knife, so they can only use their own weapon as a kitchen knife. "So you're the only one who admits to performing on the street?" Yin Nuoxing. He carefully thought about his actions just now. Coupled with the scarf's words, he suddenly felt that his whole life was gloomy. If Hui and the others heard it, it would be sung for hundreds of eras. Wow, Big Sister is an ice curse master, an extraordinary profession. Big guy, you don't have to say anything, it's decided. Qing suddenly jumped in front of Yin Nuoxing with stars in her eyes. She grabbed his hand and shook it. The worship in her eyes overflowed. Even the way she addressed him changed in an instant. The brawny man stared blankly for a moment. He rubbed his palms together in a somewhat uneasy manner and laughed dryly. "This, Miss Magus, there are many proper explorers in Jiwang City every day. Moreover, their style is bigger than ours and also more formal than ours. The success rate of following them will be higher than following us, you see." "Wow, are you stupid? What if they leave?" Qing was so angry that her hair stood up. She jumped up and knocked on the brawny man's shoulder. She wanted to knock on his head, but she couldn't reach it. Yin Nuoxing looked at these two people and rolled his eyes. He could see a little bit. There were many strange professions in this world. Those professions that possessed great strength. Those professions that possessed great strength in comparison to the strength of this world were called extraordinary. Just like the Southern Plains Magus that he heard not long ago, this Magus was also one of them. As for the specifics, he didn't go to understand it in detail. In any case, this was the case. Cough, cough. For me, whoever I find is just a formality. I can go there myself. Who I go with, it's purely up to fate. Yin Nuoxing coughed lightly. He closed one of his eyes and said faintly, "So what do you think?" Qing and the brawny man glanced at each other. Suddenly, they smiled like flowers. The brawny man's smile gave him goosebumps. "Of course, welcome." Chapter 1219. The two of them agreed so readily that Yin Nuoxing, who had prepared a lot of lines, was a little stunned. A lot of words were in his mouth, but he swallowed them back into his stomach. The extraordinaires in this world seemed to be rarer than he thought. "Oh, you two agreed quite quickly. Aren't you worried that I'm a suspicious person?" "There's nothing to worry about. Big Sister's power is right there. As long as you're not stupid, you can sense it." Qing waved her hand as she spoke, causing Yin Nuoxing to be stunned. He originally thought that she was afraid of his power, but her next sentence dispelled his thoughts. The power of an extraordinaire is related to their own nature. If they have evil intentions, they won't have such a pure phenomenon just now. Moreover, Big Sister has a very amiable aura about you. Just now, Big Sister wanted to curse, but he was suppressed by your aura. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Yin Nuoxing thought for a while. Power came from the heart. There were many worlds in the void that were similar. He had seen some of them, so he didn't find it strange. However, He didn't expect this world to be the same. Cough, cough. After the situation just now was exposed, the brawny man couldn't help but cough loudly. He rolled his eyes. Just now? Well, there's nothing to hide. Anyway, that's the situation. Cough. All right, if you want to talk, it's not the right place to talk. This. Miss Spellmaster, do you want to come to our foothold? It's not the time to set off yet. I just happen to have them put back the things they purchased. There's still many opportunities to introduce each other. I'm feeling a little cold standing here. Big sister, let's go to a warmer place to talk. Qing Lei hooked Yin Nuoxing's arm. She smiled sweetly and dragged him forward. Maybe she felt that this extraordinaire was a little amiable, or maybe it was for some other reason. Anyway, she wasn't too afraid of anything. It's been 3 years. Our team finally has another newcomer. It's not easy. Boss and Big Sister haven't been able to kidnap anyone all these years. Today, we only managed to get one in by chance. It's not easy. Shoo, lower your voice. If they hear you, they'll throw you out. But it's not easy. Yin Nuoxing's expression instantly became a little strange when she heard the two men's underlings carrying a large pile of parcels and whispering so loudly that the entire alley could hear them. She turned her head and saw Qing Lei and the burly man looking away with awkward expressions on their faces as they laughed dryly. Interesting guy. Yin Nuoxing smiled helplessly. He did not mind. After all, it was really fate that triggered something this time. His character had not changed even after dozens of eras. However, even if this matter did not happen, sooner or later, he would have to go to the snow-covered mountain range that looked different from what it actually was. He would have to go sooner or later. It was just a matter of whether it would be a day later or a month later. It would not be a problem for him to set off now. After walking out of the alley, Yin Nuoxing slowly raised his head to look at the blue sky. The corner of his mouth curled up into a somewhat strange smile. It was a strange smile that disappeared in an instant. He quickly put on a more amiable smile and said, "Speaking of which, I thought you guys were staying at that place." "Of course not." Qing Lei shook her head and said, "That's just the place where I meet up with the big guy. After we're done buying things or scamming people. We'll meet here after we're done. We'll see if we've missed anything. This is the center of Jiwang City. Next to it is the headquarters of the explorers. If you want to find a team or purchase tools for exploration, we'll go there. It's quite a distance from where we're really staying. It's not convenient for us to go there." Yin Nuoxing gave a vague response. He raised his head and pondered about something. Then he asked casually, "Speaking of which, why are you guys going to the snow-capped mountain?" This was a question that was intentional or unintentional, although he could also go there himself. Oh, this was not the main point. The main point was that they were now considered to be a team. If he did not ask about the team's purpose, it would seem a little stupid. What if they were going there to look for something or achieve something? What if they were going there to look for something? It would just be a coincidence that he would ruin it. Big sister, don't you know? I heard that extraordinaires are all reclusive. I thought it was just an exaggeration. I didn't expect it to be true. He thought it was a secret that was hard to talk about, so he had prepared his lines. He didn't expect that Qing Lei only showed a surprised expression and then a sudden realization. She nodded and said, "The snow-sealed mountains, the holy mountain that hasn't melted for 10,000 years. The big guy and I, and many others, all want to go to the holy mountain to find the holy relic." When she said this, she also showed a thoughtful expression. It was as if they did not know what the so-called sacred relics were. This made Yin Nuoxing very curious. Sacred relics? What's that? Sacred relics? It's the sacred relics. Qing Lei scratched her head and showed a silly smile. Actually, we don't know what it is either. We just heard from those people that it's amazing. 90% of the explorers gathered in Jiwang City are going there for the sacred relics of the sacred mountain. But in fact, I'm afraid no one knows what the sacred relics are. Maybe those things don't exist at all. It's just a joke that someone set out of boredom that was spread like this. We've been to the snow-capped mountain range 15 times in 3 years. At first, we've only just entered the range. Later on, we've gone more often and gained experience. The furthest we've gone out is just the edge of the hinterland of the holy mountain. Some high-level exploration teams might have reached the center. As for whether they've seen anything, it's hard to say. The burly man said from the side. His voice was as loud as thunder in Yun Nua's ears. It seemed that this matter on this planet, in this Juguang city, everyone knew about it. There was nothing special to hide. People like Qing Lei and the others who seemed to be joining in on the fun, but in the end, it was not uncommon to see them being serious about it. It was a bit of a stretch to say that. Anyway, he could see that there was some legend left in the sacred mountain that was very attractive. It attracted countless explorers to crash into the frozen sacred place like moths to a flame. Qing Lei and the brawny man and Yun Nuoxing did not take the main road. They went in and out of the intricate alleys of Juguang City. They went around and around. They took some hidden paths and shortcuts that ordinary people would not take. The entire history of Juguang City's hundreds of years of development, if all the roads were outlined, it would be like a huge nest. A nest with both main and small paths. Generations of life continued to expand and transform the main body of this nest. Without the restraint of the city wall, this development was even more unhindered. Yin Nuoxing originally still remembered the direction, but after walking out of the 10th path, he still got lost in the maze-like alleys of the ancient city. He, an outsider who had just arrived, followed two locals who had been rooted in this city for a long time. If it was another person, you would have suspected that he was going to be caught and sold. "We're out." About 10 minutes later, Qing Lei cheered softly and walked out of the last alley. She pulled Yin Nuoxing out and said, "This is the shortcut that we're used to. It takes about an hour to walk from the main road of Juguang City to here, but we can come back in 30 minutes. Yin Nuoxing just looked up at the area in the north of Juguang City. He suddenly saw that the sky was gradually dyed with a layer of purplish-green color, like an aurora that filled the entire sky. The sun in the sky was slightly dimmed and was slowly descending towards the horizon. "We spent a lot of time today. It's almost time for Wei Su to sleep. Next time, let's go in the morning." The brawny man looked at the sky and did not feel that anything was wrong. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. That sun was not a real star, but just the burning ashes left behind by the previous one. He did not expect that its light fell on this world and dyed the sunset into such a color. He had not seen such a scene many times. Explorers were a relatively noble group in this world. Well, it could not be said that. It should be said that they were a relatively popular group. This world was quite vast and was full of mysteries for the original residents here. There were many places waiting to be developed and many places waiting to be discovered. Because they did not know and were untouchable, those who watched from afar would have countless guesses and conjectures. Those conjectures were passed down from generation to generation and became legends. Now, they were waiting for someone to lift the mysterious veil of the legend. This was why so many explorers were born. The number of lives on this planet was not very high. It could only be considered a small number, and this small number was somewhat evenly distributed in various places. Naturally, there were not many groups born with this relatively small base. This was also the reason why this planet had not been fully explored yet. Although his thinking was a little biased, and this was a saying he heard from another world, this world was not much different. The place where the explorers gathered was also not a small matter. This place looked a little more upscale than the ordinary civilian district. The headquarters of the explorers was located in the center of Juguang City. Juguang City also had a district dedicated to these more special groups. No matter if they were stationed in the city or outside, they would all be in the same place. These occupations that required more resources than others did not live in the same place for most of the year. Combining these two conditions, it was right to place them near the city center and also near the exploration area. That is to say, the North District of Juguang City was directly facing the snow-covered mountain range. This place didn't look any different from the civilian district. Instead, there were a lot of special things that looked like symbols, like decorations that were more symbolic than practical. Standing at a higher place, one could see the entire North City District. Beyond that was a flat plain. Looking up slightly, one could see the end of the frozen, sacred mountain covered in thick clouds. Against the gradually darkening purplish-green sky, the sacred mountain was almost completely hidden in the shadows, which added a bit of mystery to it. Qing Lei and the others' foothold was near the center of the North District. It was not considered good or bad. It was a small house with only 3 floors, like a pavilion, built with wood and bricks. Compared to the buildings next to it, it was not much different. It was just that the corners of their little house had already cracked. The special decorations on the top of every building had disappeared without a trace, leaving only a stick standing there. The gray-white bricks were stained with black ash and looked a little dilapidated, like a dangerous building. This 3-story building had obviously been in use for a long time and urgently needed someone to repair it. With this building as the center, there were more dilapidated buildings within a radius of 500 meters, but there were only a few dilapidated buildings like this one in front of them in the entire North District. Yin Nuoxing squinted one of her eyes and looked through the gap in the wall. She could actually see the scene inside. She immediately lowered her head silently and couldn't help but sigh. Aha! This is our foothold. When we first came to Jiwang City, this was the only room that was empty. It was already a little dilapidated, and we had to pay for the repairs. Big Guy and I thought about it, and we didn't stay here for many days in the year, so we were too lazy to do it. Qing Lei noticed Yin Nuoxing's somewhat gloomy eyes and was slightly embarrassed. She scratched her red hair and said, that, although it's a little dilapidated, the facilities inside are very complete. There's a stove and a meditation room. We haven't used that place before. Big sister, you can use it now that you're here. The corner of Yin Nuoxing's eyes twitched. It turned out that this building hadn't been renovated since they settled down here 3 years ago. Oh, that's not right. She had to look back. This building didn't just look like it had been abandoned for 3 to 4 years. It was as if no one had lived here for 1,000 years. Looking at it this way, Qing Lei and the others couldn't be blamed entirely. Qing Lei felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward, so she quickly threw a glance at the big guy. The big guy also turned his head with a look of disdain. Qing Lei suddenly felt even more embarrassed. Before the atmosphere became completely awkward, she quickly pushed the door open and rushed in. Aha! Come in first. Although it looks small, it's not a problem for us to stay here. Big sister, you can follow me to the 3rd floor. Don't be too restrained. The chandelier is a little loose, so it's best not to make too much noise when you pass by. As Qing Lei said, although this 3-story building looked like it could be ranked as one of the top 5 worst buildings in the North City District, the facilities inside were still quite complete. The chandelier that was powered by a spell was still on. There were no holes in the ceiling, the walls weren't crumbling, and the stairs weren't rotten and hollow. Yin Nuoxing accidentally crushed a piece of the handrail when she habitually touched it. Just as she was wondering if she had accidentally used too much force, Qing Lei and the big guy had already turned their heads with an awkward expression. Suddenly, she understood everything. The reason why nothing happened to them while staying in this house was because they didn't stay here for long, and they were lucky. The 2 men quickly opened a fireplace, but it wasn't a burning flame inside. Instead, it was something that looked like a combination of a charm and a magic circle. It was probably a spell or something like that in this world. After the fireplace was opened, a gentle breeze like the warm spring sun blew into the 3-story house, dispelling the cold air from the outside world. The square hall on the 1st floor looked very simple, and there were many small rooms with simple tables and chairs and a shaky chandelier. Other than that, there was nothing else. Also, the space inside did look bigger than it looked from the outside. It was big enough to accommodate more than 20 people, so he wasn't surprised. The big guy and his men seemed to have to tidy up the things they had bought today, so they stayed on the 1st and 2nd floors. Qing Lei pulled Yin Nuoxing up to the 3rd floor. When they went upstairs, they could still hear the clanking and thumping sounds. The noise downstairs didn't sound like they were tidying up or shopping, but more like they were doing something strange. However, since he had heard a lot of such noises along the way in the North City District, he didn't think it was strange. After all, explorers were always able to get their hands on some strange things. The 3rd floor seemed to be where Qing Lei lived alone. The space was relatively small, but it was still spacious. The third floor wasn't the top yet, and there was a staircase that led to the rooftop above. Yin Nuoxing initially thought that this was her boudoir, so he hesitated for a while. But when he saw that the decorations here were so simple that there was nothing there, he finally realized that the explorers lived in was really just a house without any extra furnishings. There were some pictures hanging on the walls of the third floor. One of them was a portrait of a person, and the others were the terrain of this planet, and it was very wide. Based on the strength of life on this planet that he had observed, it shouldn't be possible to depict such a topographical image of the world from the sky. Even if there were extraordinaries, they wouldn't be able to explain it. Ah, big sister, are you curious about those? Qing Lei just put down her things and came over. When she saw Yin Nuoxing looking at the pictures curiously, she suddenly became serious and whispered in his ear, "Let me tell you, this is a secret. It is said that this is a relic left behind by the life of the previous season." The previous season. Yin Nuoxing widened his eyes slightly. In other words, this planet had once ushered in destruction and rebirth, and more than one season of life had passed. This season of Qing Lei and the others might be the second season, or it might be even more. If that was the case, the life of the previous season should be even more powerful. Then those pictures could explain that there was once such a powerful life that could overlook the appearance of this planet from that angle. However, these aren't any special secrets. There are a lot of them hanging in the explorers' headquarters. These are the topographic maps. Look, this is Jiwang City, this is Azure City, and this is the Dian Black Sea. They're all very clear. I don't know how they did it. Even the current scholars can't come up with a reasonable explanation, even after racking their brains. Qing Lei pointed at the pictures hanging on the wall and said one by one. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. So these are not considered secrets, and everyone knew about them. He saw her slightly dazed expression and thought for a while, then said, "There's nothing to explain. The life of the previous season was very powerful. It could break free from its shackles and fly into the sky. That's all." Ah, big sister, what you said is very similar to the answer given by that famous scholar. As expected of an extraordinary. Qing Lei looked at him in surprise. Oh. Yin Nuoxing raised his eyebrows slightly. It was not difficult to understand this. This was for them, but for them, the life of this season, it should be very difficult to understand. That scholar was very insightful. Then what happened to him? The next day, he was treated as a lunatic and dragged away to be treated. Qing Lei shrugged. Yin Nuoxing, seeing his stiff expression, Qing Lei laughed. Ha! Big sister's expression is very strange. Actually, this sentence is the conclusion I came to after condensing a long speech of his. The original words he said were too outrageous. Something about being omnipotent in the sky or the ground, something about being able to cross the sea of stars, and so on. It's too scary. Yin Nuoxing, perhaps that scholar unintentionally told the truth, but it was too advanced for people to understand. Even if they understood, they would not believe it. The life of this season was naturally suspicious of the existence of the previous season. Moreover, the difference was so huge. People were always unwilling to believe that there was something that they could not understand or control, and it seemed that this place was no exception. This person is? Yin Nuoxing stiffly changed the topic and pointed at the only portrait. Qing Lei's expression suddenly changed a little, and her eyes became a little soft. Suddenly, she smiled foolishly. "This is my teacher. He is also an explorer." She looked as if she was hiding something. Before Yin Nuoxing could probe further, she continued, "He is the scholar I told you about just now." Yin Nuoxing's expression froze slightly. He looked at her with a little shock. After a long silence, he said softly, "I'm sorry. It's okay, it's okay. Teacher is still alive. He was just taken away for training." Qing Lei grinned and waved her hand. "I still remember what teacher told me at that time. I believe that everything is true, but there is no way to prove it." Yin Nuoxing tilted his head. "So, you want to go to the holy mountain to look for the holy relic. You want to find something, and you want to find some evidence about the life of the previous season?" Qing Lei was silent for a while. Then, she nodded gently. Yes, that sacred mountain didn't just appear in this season or this era. Previously, it was said that it was an ancient legend covered with the most mysterious veil, waiting for someone to go and lift it. Then, in the previous era, in the previous season, it clearly existed as well. It was just that he didn't know what they thought of this sacred mountain at that time. However, since it was still a legend now, the truth should not have been discovered in the previous season. Perhaps there would be some traces left there, not the traces of the holy mountain itself, but the traces left by the life of the previous season when they went to search for the holy relic. If they had been there before, there would definitely be traces left behind. Chapter 12:20. There was no moon in this world. There were only a few stars that were very far away in the sky. They were so weak that they seemed to be about to be extinguished. The night was a little dark. One could only see the silhouette of the stars 10 meters away. If Juguang City did not light up the spell lamps, one might not even be able to see the road clearly. Yin Nuoxing quickly changed the topic. Fortunately, Qinglei was also a simple-minded girl. She giggled and forgot about the previous topic. She continued to talk about other things with him. Other than what I'm looking for in the sacred mountain, there are also some items left behind by some extraordinaires in ancient times. Any item that an ordinary exploration team finds, regardless of whether it can still be used, can be exchanged at the headquarters for wealth that is enough for a 20-man team to live a prosperous life for 5 to 6 years. Our team actually relied on this to survive. That was the starting point of everything. It allowed us to move into Juguang City from a distant place. We're closer to the snow-capped mountains so that we don't have to travel long distances every time. Yin Nuoxing moved a long back chair over and turned it upside down. He leaned on the back of the chair and said, "You've been there 15 times, but you still haven't found what you're looking for." Qinglei shook her head. The life of the previous season is very far away. This world once welcomed destruction, but after countless years, it was reborn. This is the germination of life again. This is what my teacher said. The ancient times that we're talking about now don't actually refer to the life of the previous season. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Of course, he knew this. When this planet welcomed destruction and rebirth, the cycle of life would complete. Then, a new season would begin, which was the season where Qinglei and the others existed. Yin Nuoxing looked at the sky outside and suddenly realized that it was dark outside. There was no moon or moonlight, so he couldn't tell what time it was. He thought for a moment and said, "When are we leaving? If you don't need to make any preparations, we'll follow our original plan and depart before noon tomorrow. If you need to make any preparations, you can delay it until the day after tomorrow, but it's best not to exceed these 2 days." Qinglei's expression became more serious as she gradually revealed the temperament of an experienced explorer. "It's fine if we're just going to the outskirts of the snow-capped mountains, but we're going to be near the heart of the snow-capped mountains. According to the information from the other side, these 2 days are the best time. If we're late, we might be trapped by the storm of the sacred mountain. We'll have to wait until the next storm weakens before we can escape. But if we're lucky, we might be able to escape from the storm. I don't want to gamble on that slim hope." "All right, I don't have anything to prepare. Let's set off tomorrow." Yin Nuoxing nodded. "Do you need me to prepare anything? I see that you're bringing a lot of things." Just as he was about to say that he had a spatial spell to store things, Qinglei waved her hand and grinned. "Don't worry about it. The big guy will take care of it. Our team has always been like this. I'm in charge of watching the road, and they're in charge of carrying things. If we're leaving at noon, we might have to get up early to deal with other things. I'll take a rest first. Big sister, you can sleep on this side of the bed. I won't cross the line if I sleep in the middle of the night." "Ah, I forgot that big sister is an extraordinary. There's a meditation room inside, so just be casual. There's nothing that you can't go to or touch in this place." "Well, I'll sleep first." After Qinglei said this, she leaned back and lay on the bed. She curled up into a small ball, which only took up half of the bed, and quickly began to snore softly. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. Her ability to sleep in seconds was too strong. He thought that as a girl, even if Qinglei was used to the harsh environment in the wild as an explorer, she would do something appropriate for her gender when she finally came back. For example, she would take a bath at night and have an elegant meal. He did not expect her to just lie down like that. He glanced at the wooden bed that was a little more than 2 meters wide. After pondering for a while, he turned and walked into the meditation room inside. He originally thought that this was a place similar to the cultivation room, a neat little stone room with a stone bed. When he walked in and saw the furnishings inside, he couldn't help but stare blankly. This meditation room was a little bigger than he imagined. Just now, he saw that the 3rd floor was a little smaller than the 2nd floor. That smaller space might be here. The most important thing was that this meditation room was filled with rows upon rows of books and ancient books, suffused with an ancient and antiquated smell. They were probably placed here to accumulate dust and hadn't been moved for a long time. When he moved a stack of books, he could see that there was a clean mark left on the floor, as well as traces of dust on the edges. "These are her teachers," the scarf spirit said at this moment. Previously, there were people around Yin Nuashing, so did not dare to speak casually. Yin Nuashing bent down and picked up a book that had fallen from the messy mountain of books. He patted it lightly and brushed off the dust on the cover. Probably an explorer. Ordinary explorers would think that it was impossible to collect these things. Only those who were both explorers and learners could collect books of this magnitude. In addition, with the latter identity, he could also personally record those legends that no one knew of. Those books were placed neatly. Except for 1 or 2 books that had left their original places and fell down, the rest were lying quietly, waiting for the day when they would be opened again. This meditation room was originally very spacious, but after it was filled with these books, it did not feel so spacious anymore. However, there was still a place for him to sit down. He did not know why, but when he saw this room full of books, he felt overflowing with sleepiness. It was as if there were thousands of books hidden in his brain. Just thinking about it made him drowsy. There was still a window in the meditation room. Outside the window was the thick night sky. When he pushed it open, he could see the scenery of the North City district. There was nothing to see, so he closed the window again. However, the existence of this window reduced his sleepiness a little, making people who entered this monotonous meditation room feel a little more comfortable in their hearts. "What the hell are you thinking?" the scarf spirit suddenly said. "I don't think that with your realm, you can't make people not get close to that place. Also, after that, you could have left at any time, but you just had to talk so much nonsense with them. In the end, you even joined them and became one of them. It's impossible that you couldn't find the way to that snow-sealed mountain range, right?" Yin Nuashing closed a book that he casually opened, and a strange smile appeared on his face. "If I said that I chose to do this because I thought it was fun, would you believe me?" The scarf spirit patted him. "Then, other than believing, can I doubt it? God knows what strange things you are doing. I don't dare to ask, and I don't dare to say." Yin Nuashing smiled slightly, changed a book, brushed off the dust on it, and opened it again. "It's just some very deliberate, and casual reasons. You will know when the time comes. However, I really did follow fate. They happened to meet me, so I just happened to play with them." What a coincidence. The scarf spirit made a non-committal sound. Taking advantage of the silence of the night, his body emitted a faint light. With a slight shake, he turned into Ming and landed on the ground. The imitating divine power shone in this meditation room, brushing away all the dust, and the books piled on the ground were all brand new. "Hey, you're easy to be seen like this." Yin Nuashing looked up and glanced at him and said casually. Apparently, he was just saying it casually and did not intend to do anything. The little angel made a face at him and then leaned over to look at the book in Yin Nuashing's hand. "What are you reading? You are so engrossed." The things in this world, recorded by this scholar himself, are the faint traces left by the life of the last quarter. Yin Nuashing moved the book a little so that it could also see it. But many of them are legends that cannot be proven. Judging from the pictures I just saw and the level of energy that exists on this planet now, the former was not left by the people of this world. So, the theory of the life of the last quarter should be valid, unless it is an alien. Look, the book that he was reading at this time recorded a lot of things that could not be verified, a mixture of legends, myths, and perhaps some people who were overly worshipped and exaggerated, mixed with strange characters. In this book, the life of the last quarter was very powerful, broke free from the shackles, flew into the stars, and crossed the galaxy. Yin Nuoxing closed the book with a bang and solemnly put it back to its original place. What he wanted to see now was not these. What he wanted to see was about the snow mountain. The previous reading was not completely fruitless. More or less, a little corner of the book was related to the sacred mountain, and there were indeed some records, but those were of no help to Yin Nuoxing. Moreover, the things recorded in the book might have a lot of discrepancies with reality, so it was obviously impossible to treat it as accurate facts. The little angel also flipped through the book for a while, but it was not interested at all. After reading for a while, it lay on Yin Nuoxing's lap and yawned. Yin Nuoxing glanced at it and did not pay attention to it. He casually picked up a book in hand, which was already the 10th book. It recorded legends and myths and mentioned many places with strange names in the book. Of course, there were also names that looked very normal. There was information about the snow-capped mountains in the book, which was not surprising. He had already guessed that the sacred mountain was probably passed down from the last quarter, or even earlier. However, there was really no record of this. The books that mentioned the sacred mountain were only some marginal records, and there was no specific mention of what was inside. He guessed that these should be the records left behind by the life forms of this season. If it was the records left behind by the life forms of the previous season, it should not have left behind such superficial information. Yin Nuoxing patiently flipped through a few books. After half an hour, he found that there was indeed nothing worth paying attention to, so he gave up on this meaningless action. He looked up at the night sky outside, and just as he was thinking about whether he should just sleep like this for the night, he suddenly noticed something outside. It occupied the entire window, and it was earthy yellow and striped. He was stunned for a moment. He thought it was some strange astronomical phenomenon, so he did not pay attention to it. But when he turned his head, he suddenly remembered something, and goosebumps rose all over his body. He quickly dragged the little angel up and ran towards the stairs on the 3rd floor. The two people hurried to the rooftop. To be exact, it was the little angel who was dragged upstairs by him. When they stopped, it was still in a daze. It quickly rubbed its eyes and was about to complain, but as soon as it opened its eyes, it saw an incredible scene in front of it. It was across the entire night sky, emitting a faint light. It was not as bright as the moon, but it allowed people to see its full appearance clearly. It suddenly appeared in the sky and successfully attracted the attention of Yin Nuoxing and the others. It was a huge planet with layers of yellow and dark red stripes. It looked like a huge sandwich cake. That was actually a huge storm on the planet, a storm that was much faster than the speed of sound. It should be another planet that belonged to this galaxy. A huge planet should be in the periphery. When they first landed, the surrounding star field was empty, and there were no signs of other planets at all. But now, it suddenly appeared in front of them and occupied the entire night sky. Well, there was nothing else at night on this planet anyway. It seemed to be in a relatively empty star field. There were no stars around it, no celestial bodies that were millions of light years away. In this lonely star field, there was only themselves. There seems to be a record of this in the book you just read. It reminded softly. Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment and knew what it was talking about. This satellite of Wei Su, the guardian of the night sky of this continent. Since ancient times, many scholars have studied the relationship between this huge planet and this continent. I'm just curious why this planet was not torn to pieces by the huge gravitational force of this satellite. It was too close, so close that everyone could see the details of its layered stripes clearly with the naked eye. The girl's teacher, the scholar with a rather wild imagination, had also mentioned this satellite in his records. He claimed that it was the second origin of life created by the previous generation of life. It was the biggest trace they left behind. He even used some of the minor incidents on this continent in an attempt to prove that it was true. He even used some large-scale natural disasters on the continent to explain the reason why they left this continent and this planet. Avoiding disasters. That's a plausible reason, but shouldn't be that simple. It shook its head. Of course, you and I know that the planet only has a big storm with a speed of tens of thousands of meters per second and a solid core. Other than that, there's nothing. There's no life, no land, no sea, just a storm. Of course, that's from our own experience. This world, those who deny it probably think that it's just an unrealistic imagination. Absurd and weird imagination, a little too advanced to the point of being unrealistic. But it can't be helped. They can't even fully understand the land under their feet. How can they expect them to know more about the outside world? Yin Nuoxing shrugged. Your intuition is quite sharp, but you're a little wrong. It also shrugged, and then its face darkened slightly. Tell me, where did all the lives in the previous quarter go? Where did they go? That's hard to say. There are many theories. I haven't explored it, so I can only give you a simple explanation. Yin Nuoxing twirled a strand of black hair and said, first of all, although they had the power to fly and burrow into the ground, and their life level and energy level were not low, they did not reach a very high level. They may not have left this continent, and in the end, they were all wiped out in an untraceable disaster. Then, they all left and went to a faraway place. They either didn't come back, or they can't come back. The little angel was silent for a moment. Then it said, you just said that this star system is very lonely. The surrounding starry sky is abnormally empty, like an isolated island in the star field. There are only a few places to stay, and within the limits of one's vision, there is no place to stand. Their footsteps are naturally limited, and it is impossible for them to travel very far. They can only survive on this isolated island. Yin Nuoxing clenched her hands and said, so I think they should not be able to escape. If this is true, then it is even more impossible for them to cross the galaxy, as mentioned by the scholar. But we can't rule out the possibility that the previous life was unreasonably powerful and far surpassed the life of this season by hundreds of galaxies. They were so powerful that they could move the galaxy in the blink of an eye. Then where would they be now? It tilted its head, puzzled. Who knows? This question is even more complicated. The two people were silent at the same time as they watched the red and yellow striped planet slowly move across the horizon. In fact, that speed was actually quite fast for such a big thing in the stars. But standing there, they could only see a little of it as it moved across the sky bit by bit, the yellow and red stripes rolling endlessly. Well, don't you want to go there and have a look? It suddenly interrupted Yin Nuoxing's contemplation. He said subconsciously, there? Where? Then he saw it raise its hand and point at the huge planet. Yin Nuoxing glanced at it and shook his head. I've seen it just now. There's nothing but storms and storms. You said before that you couldn't feel any breath of life or residual life in the snow-capped mountains. In the end, a large group of guys who have been there many times and almost treated it as their backyard appeared right under their noses. Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing frowned and said, now is not the time to go. Let's go to the snow-capped mountains tomorrow. After that, he looked up again and showed a strange smile to the sky, as if he was putting on this expression for anyone to see. Chapter 12:22. In the dark night sky, the giant planet with the storm was slowly disappearing from sight. It was spinning so fast that it seemed to be affected by the storm. After it spun about half around on the side facing the continent, some dark shadows that were difficult to identify in the night sky appeared in Yin Nuoxing's sight. Dark fragments hovered around the giant planet like small meteorites. But in the center of those small meteorites, there was a huge shadow that was about 1/10 the size of the planet. Hidden in its shadow, it was difficult to be discovered. He dared to guarantee that with the eyesight of mortals, even the extraordinaires of this continent, they would not be able to discover these things. Most of their vision would be captured by the giant planet. At most, they would discover a faint shadow in the upper right corner of the planet that covered its bulk. 1. Several huge shadows surrounded by hundreds of thousands of small shadows. They were probably the satellites of the Vesuvius satellite, hidden in the night sky. However, the outline of the shadow did not look like a regular satellite. There were obvious undulations in the outline. It did not look like an incomplete circle, but more like a shattered flat continent. The continent in the sky seemed to be captured by the gravitational force of the giant planet. Fragments broke away from it little by little and fell towards the planet below. When it turned around with the planet and revealed its full appearance to Yun Nuoxing and the others, the shadow was floating on top of the remaining half of the planet. It was completely exposed. He could now assert that there used to be a complete continent there. As for whether it had anything to do with the planet under his feet and what kind of relationship it had, he still didn't know. Nonsense. It hadn't even been there. How would he know? Of course, he could directly connect with the heart of the world here to find out what had happened, just like how he had obtained the language here when he first came down. But that would be boring. What's the difference between obtaining information from the heart of the world and reading a book? Yin Nuoxing shrugged at the little angel as an answer. It raised its eyebrows slightly and looked at his face from top to bottom with a suspicious gaze. It only felt that it was very inconceivable. This guy who was in the advanced stage of laziness and wanted nothing more than to marry the cloud layer and sleep with her for the rest of his life actually said such a thing? It was hard to believe, but it was more concerned about something else. By the way, your period of weakness hasn't come yet? I remember that's the after effect of losing your divine soul and divine right. Back in the realm of the gods, you were having a hard time. Yin Nuoxing was also stunned. She lowered her head and clenched her fists. Only then did she remember what she had forgotten. Oh, now that you mention it, I just remembered. But I'm really fine now. I don't know what's wrong with me. But it's a good thing that the sequelae didn't break out. I don't have to suffer so much. It frowned. How could it recover so easily when it was related to its divine soul and divine right? Is it because of this space? I don't know. Yin Nuoxing shrugged. But if you really want to know why, it's not like I can't explain it to you. What do you mean? You know what's going on? Of course. That's my own situation. How could I not know? He nodded with a relaxed expression. Then, he turned around and leaned against the wall. It's probably because I'm far away from the realm of the gods. My divinity carrier was condensed from all the rules of the divine realm and those other things, fusing with my own divine soul and divine right to connect it. Now that it's blown up, it's probably a backlash from the rules of the divine realm, which is why I'm feeling better now that I'm away from the divine realm. However, it's also a form of punishment. Without receiving the backlash there, the recovery of my divinity would be slower. So that's it. It murmured softly. I thought it was the effect of this space. While the two people were talking, the shadow continent, hanging in the sky, was still rotating slowly with the huge planet. It was moving slowly across the sky at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the moment, it was already in the middle of the entire field of vision. At this speed, it would disappear on the other side of the sky in another hour. The whole process was silent. He did not notice that any life on the planet had noticed the shadow continent. Perhaps only the two of them could notice it. He could even imagine the dull, rumbling sound of the huge fragment moving across the sky, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were crushing the earth. It was like thunder that had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years. Recalling the contents of the book that he had just read, Yin Nuoxing was a little depressed. There was no record of the shadow continent in the book. Perhaps the scholar could not see the broken continent hidden in the sky. Forget it. It's useless to think so much now. Yin Nuoxing stretched and turned to walk down the stairs. Let's rest first. Instead of thinking blindly here, it's better to ask the locals tomorrow. With such a big shadow and such a large area of darkness, I don't believe that no one could see it. Weren't you the one who said that mortals can't see these things? It rolled its eyes and followed behind him in annoyance. Yes, I said that. I just hope that there will be a little miracle. Yes, there's nothing wrong with it. Early the next morning, in this dilapidated building with 3 floors and a rooftop, Qing Lei was stretching her limbs under the rays of the morning sun. Her body, which was much taller than ordinary girls, cast a large shadow under the rays of the sun. Ah, shadow? The broken continent? Yin Nuashing's sudden question made the girl, who was stretching her waist, almost fall down. She looked very surprised and quickly got up. So you can see the shadow continent too. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. Looking at her face full of joy and excitement, it was as if she had discovered something extremely rare. Ah, isn't it just the broken continent hidden in the shadow of the satellite? Why are you so excited? So we can see it too? Are there very few people who can see it? Of course. Even extraordinaires can hardly see it. Almost everyone thinks that it's just some shadows of the Vesuvius satellite. For thousands of years, it has been a normal phenomenon. But my teacher has seen it with his own eyes. He saw it emerge from the shadows and face the light. From then on, I know that it's a broken continent hidden in the shadows, not the shadow of a satellite. Ha! Ha! Yin Nuashing tilted her head, scratched her head, and pretended to be ignorant. Is it rare? What I mean is, it's very powerful to be able to see that thing. Of course, big sister, you're the only one I know who can recognize the shadow. Big guy and I know it, so we can understand it, but we can't see it directly. Qing Lei's face had a smile, revealing a row of shiny silver teeth. Big guy and I often look at it in the night sky, hoping that one day we can see the phenomenon of breaking out of the shadow, as my teacher said. But we never saw it. Anyway, since we knew about it, we always feel that we can see something different in the shadow. No matter when we see it, no matter how many times we see it, we feel that it's a very fascinating, mysterious, and unexplainable scenery. Big sister, can you tell me what you see? What's up there? Are there mountains? Are there cities? Are there any signs of life? Seeing that she was about to go crazy, Yin Nuashing thought of Chu Yingzhan's usual crazy actions. His cheeks twitched, and he hurriedly pushed her back, saying, "Let me think for a bit. I saw mountains and rivers, traces of craters, and also some patterns that I don't understand. As for signs of life, it's very regrettable. My eyesight isn't that exaggerated, so I can't see the details from so far away." Of course, he was lying again. He didn't just see it. The whole picture of the shadow continent was engraved in his mind. But that was a depressing answer. There were signs of life on it, but there were no signs of life at all now. The traces of life were almost gone. With the environment there, even if there was something there, it was unlikely that it was still alive now. That's all I can see. Cough. I'm the one asking you. Do you know anything about the shadow continent? Do you have time to chat? I'm free. Anyway, there's nothing to do. If you want to prepare, I've already prepared it when Big Sister and Big Sister's little sister were still asleep. Yin Nuashing, huh? She pointed behind him, and Yin Nuashing turned around abruptly. He saw the little angel standing not far behind him, flapping its wings in the face of the morning sun. It looked like a dark shadow standing in front of him and stretching its back, causing his eyelids to twitch. Yesterday, he was in the meditation room, and this guy turned into a quilt. Today, he appeared again. He didn't know whether to complain about this guy's versatile transformation or that it appeared again. The big guy has already told you. Yin Nuashing scratched his head awkwardly. Actually, Big Sister, you don't have to say it. You just have to be careful. Everyone has their own secrets. It doesn't matter if you say it or not. Qing Lei grinned. It just so happens that I'm done stretching. Let's talk about that place. The topic is a little broad and a little brainless. I heard it all from my teacher because there is no record of the shadow continent in this world. Legend. Well, it can only be a legend. It may be another continent, a continent like our continent, but it is dragged by Wei Su's satellite. The two continents only meet each other a little every night. There used to be an intersection between the two continents. Big Sister, you should know what I'm talking about used to. Yin Nuashing nodded. It was probably the life of the previous season. At that time, the life was very powerful. It had no problem flying across the sky and the sea of stars. There is nothing wrong with the intersection of two continents so close to each other. However, that continent, according to common sense, that continent should not exist. It could not have existed in that place from the beginning. It should have been like this planet at the beginning, with a stable orbit and stable living conditions. But when it approached that huge planet, all these conditions were destroyed. That's right. According to his little calculations, the shadow continent should have flown to that place from somewhere else. Then, the entire world was destroyed. He didn't interrupt Qing Lei, but continued to listen. Well, that's just one of the theories. Teacher himself couldn't say for sure. The distance was too far, and the number of times he could observe was very small. He could only get some weak information from those shallow observations, and then tell us about it with his own understanding. Teacher also said that it might be the continent they created when they migrated there last season, because there was a disaster on the continent where we are now, which was enough to cause the extinction of life in that season. They knew about it and had enough strength, so they moved away to the broken shadow continent. Then, they didn't know what happened after that. Personally, I'm more inclined to this theory, but it's the same. There's no evidence, and there's no way to prove it. It's just empty talk. Yun Nuoxing stretched out his finger and twirled a strand of his long hair. This theory was reasonable, and it could also be said the other way around. For example, the shadow continent was once stable, and had stable conditions. One day, there was a sudden disaster, and the whole continent collided with the satellite, and the life on it moved to this place. He felt that this theory was also feasible. Anyway, there was no way to prove it. Oh, the things that mortals could not prove, he had plenty of ways to prove it. Teacher also said that there was a more powerful race there. They were called gods. Gods and so on. Which theory do you think is more reliable? Yin Nuoxing wanted to say that he agreed with the latter theory, but he felt that another theory was more appropriate. However, he did not know what would happen if he said that her teacher's words were wrong in front of Qing Lei. So he asked directly, "What do you think?" "Well, I actually think that maybe the origin of life on our continent came from that broken continent." Qing Lei pursed her lips. After a moment, she smiled slightly. "It's just a guess anyway. There's no problem in guessing." Yin Nuoxing smiled and nodded. He also agreed with this theory. He did not expect to bump into it. All in all, it must be a continent that once or still has life. However, we have no way to investigate all of this. I'm an explorer. I believe in the evidence that I can touch and come into contact with. I'm not like a scholar who just talks about everything. Of course, I have to do my best to prove the hypothesis that I put forward. Qing Lei puffed out her chest and said strongly, "Ahem, you said the same thing last time. There's still the second half of the sentence. Don't you want to say it to Miss Xing?" There was a light cough behind them. Yin Nuoxing, Qing Lei, and a certain little angel all turned their heads and saw the big guy walking up the stairs that were too small for his size. He then greeted the former. "Good morning, Miss Xing." "Hey, big guy. Don't ruin my show. I was just about to say it." Qing Lei put her hands on her hips and bent over. Then, she looked at Yin Nuoxing and said, "There's more to it." "Well, it sounds uncomfortable." "Big sister, you're an extraordinary. Do you want me to say it?" Yin Nuoxing smiled. "Just say it. Since you're an extraordinary, you won't be affected by a few words." Qing Lei nodded and said, "I'm very tough, but the power of mortals is right there. What do we do? Talking won't change anything. It's as if being tough will make the truth a little different. We are mortals. The strongest recorded extraordinary is also immortal to the lives of the previous generation. If we go back to the river of history, what happened in the distant past? There must be a reason for the two continents. Was it to hide from something at that time? Was it for what purpose did they create it at that time? They, in the last season, possessed great power and could do anything they wished. Now, that has disappeared, and only a little bit of dilapidated walls stubbornly narrates information that has been distorted by others. I hope that one day I can find something inconceivable, something that no scholar can explain. Something like ancient traces, ancient ruins, miracles. Not only for my teacher, I also want to prove that they once existed, that they are the ones who interacted with us. Perhaps they are our ancestors. The answer was a little out of Yun Nuoxing's expectation. He had heard this saying many times. Many people in many worlds, many people, and many of them who were ambitious beyond the heavens had said the same thing. They believed that human power was enough to break the sky, that human power was enough to shape everything. Even in the realm of the gods were transformed from humans. The only difference was that the latter had such conditions and power. Only this world, unfortunately, they did not have the power to change the world. That kind of thinking could only be a thought. The lives of the previous generation, at most, could only cross the galaxy. They should not be able to understand the void, and could not cross the sea of despair in the void. What a stubborn statement. You seem to want to prove something. You're a little obsessed. It said softly. Qing Lei stuck out her tongue and said, "We can't leave everything to imagination. We have to prove it. Empty guesses are not enough. The things that the ancestors could not do, the things that they could not touch, should not be left to the future generations. Why not use this as a starting point and do an adventure that no one dares to imagine? Don't you think so, big sister?" Yin Nuoxing smiled and said, "What a stubborn statement. But I like it. So go and prove it. Your first stop is, of course, it's the snow-capped mountains. But big sister, you haven't answered me yet. What do you think of those? Do you think that those were created by the previous generation of life? Or do you think that it's their birthplace? Or do you think that it's the so-called residence of the gods, as my teacher said?" Yin Nuoxing did not expect her to change the topic back. At this moment, she asked him again. He could not help but raise his head and look at the sky. He smiled and said, "Who knows? I don't know what I think either." You're so cunning. You actually managed to escape." Qing Lei pretended to be angry and waved her little fist at him. "But if I have to say, I think that it's a—" He pondered for a while and said, "Even if there was life there, it's a life that existed for a special purpose. To be honest with you, I think that it's related to some so-called god. It's not a random fantasy. It's not a figment of my imagination. It's something that I think after thinking about it for a while. Moreover, that could also be the place where they originated from in the previous generation. As for why, how could he not think about it when a certain little angel said those words yesterday? The power of God's destruction. Everything related to the word God would become complicated. Only God knew what the final answer would be. A combination of two answers. You're really big, sister." Qing Lei grinned and said, "All right, the morning chatting time is over. We've also finished taking a breath. It's about time to prepare and set off. Yes, just say what you want. We've already prepared." Chapter 12:23. Half a day passed peacefully. Yin Nuoxing and a certain little angel wandered around the third floor, watching the big guy and the others make their final preparations. They were busy preparing the final matters. Even Qing Lei put away her lazy state and was commanding everyone, saying some professional terms. Anyway, Yin Nuoxing and the others couldn't really understand it, so they could only understand it. After Yin Nuoxing, who knew how many times she yawned, it was already close to noon. The group rested a little and ate a lunch that wasn't very full but didn't affect their spirits. The group then set off in high spirits. Yin Nuoxing noticed that not everyone followed. Many of the big guys' underlings followed them out of the 3-story building and then watched them get on a carriage. Some of them got on another carriage, and the remaining half disbanded on the spot and didn't return to the building. The carriage was hired by Qing Lei and the others. There were many people going to the snow-capped mountains from Juguang City, and many people were willing to do such a simple business of transporting passengers and transportation. They were sitting in a very exquisite black carriage with gold inlaid on the edges. In front of the carriage, there were 2 creatures that looked like horses but weren't horses. Anyway, Yin Nuoxing and the others didn't know her. The carriage they were in was dragging a pile of luggage. 10 meters behind them was another carriage with the big guy's underlings. There were only 10 people in the 2 carriages, which was even fewer than she expected. Going to the snow-capped mountains has a high physical requirement. Not all of those little brats can follow us. Even among the 6 who are following us, only 3 can follow us to the hinterland. The remaining 3 may rest halfway and stay behind to support us. Yin Nuashing nodded to show that she understood. For ordinary people, the frozen land that couldn't see the sun and moon all year round was indeed not a place that could be casually entered. If they didn't want to lose their lives, it was best to act according to their ability. After the vigorous departure, Qing Lei didn't let the coachman go to the snow-capped mountains at the beginning. She checked some of the shops next to the explorer's headquarters and bought some commonly used things, tools, and medicine. Finally, she followed the crowd that emerged from Juguang City and left this bustling place together. They really followed the crowd. Hundreds and thousands of carriages were squeezed on the wide road. The carriage that Yin Nuashing and the others took was not particularly eye-catching in this torrent. The other carriages were big and wide, and the luggage they were dragging was as if they were moving. An entire team of dozens of carriages looked unusually lively and luxurious. On the other hand, their group of people only had 2 carriages and looked like they were playing. Yin Nuashing finally understood what the big guy meant by other people's expedition team yesterday. Oh, he was now embarrassed and turned his head away. Ahem, don't mind the number of people. Under Yin Nuashing's strange gaze, the big guy braced himself and said, "We are elites." Yes, elites. Although we are small, we have all the essentials. Hee. This time, with Master Oro leading the way, we will definitely be able to enter the heart of the snow-capped mountains smoothly. Master Oro is one of the top 3 curse masters. If even he can't do anything, then it will be difficult for anyone to enter the heart of the snow-capped mountains. Moreover, these 2 days are a rare, stable period. We have to take advantage of these 2 days. Hearing the conversation outside, the big guy's expression became blank again. This time, he was completely speechless and could only laugh foolishly and dryly. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and turned his head away. It seemed that these 2 days were indeed a good time to explore the snow-capped mountain range. There must be a reason why so many people chose to squeeze in at the same time on this day. As for the so-called stable period, it was because the wind and snow would be weaker, or because of some other reason he did not care too much. He really did not believe that this small snow mountain could stop him. Qing Lei sat in the front and skillfully pointed out the road for the driver. It seemed that not everyone had entered the snow-capped mountains from the same direction. Not long after they left the city, he heard about 6 or 7 landing points. Some of them even went around to the other side of the snow-capped mountains. They seemed to be part of a group that had started from the back of the mountain. Yin Nuashing poked his head out of the window in boredom. The towering buildings of Juguang City gradually receded from his sight. They were right in the middle of this torrent. The group left the main road of Juguang City and officially stepped onto the road to the snow-capped mountains. When the 2 groups next to him saw that there was a young lady who was as beautiful as a flower in jade on the carriage, a few men who were galloping on their horses whistled cheerfully at him. He couldn't help but want to freeze these people into ice shards, so he angrily put down the curtain. When the others saw this scene, they couldn't help but laugh loudly. To be able to see something interesting in the midst of a boring journey, they would treat it as a diversion. In any case, they were already used to it, and at most, they would just tease a little. Who knew what kind of person was sitting in the carriage? They all knew that they shouldn't be too presumptuous. Hey, I finally got it. This driver seems to be a newbie. He must have been given directions when we came out, but it's still a little difficult for him to find the place we're going. I've been blabbering for a long time before he finally knew where we're going. Qing Lei sighed and shrunk into the carriage before shrugging at the few of them. A newbie. Oh, other people let him out to broaden his knowledge. It's not uncommon, but I didn't expect that we would coincidentally bump into him. The big guy expressed a little surprise and nodded. Are you sure you've explained the destination clearly? We're going to go up from the other side of the snow-capped mountains, not this side or the side. Oh, don't worry. There won't be a problem. Seeing her solemn expression, Yin Nuashing and the big guy shuddered. They looked at each other tacitly and felt that there might be some unexpected problems on this journey. When the little angel got on the carriage, she fell asleep with the sound of the wheels rubbing against the ground and the sound of the luggage behind her. A pair of 5 to 6 meters wide, stretched wings shrank in the small carriage. They dragged on the ground and even bent. If Ming's real angel was here, she might have been in so much pain that her eyes would be filled with tears. However, since this was an illusion, she did not seem to be able to feel pain. Except for the last time when her wings were caught by the door, she did not have much of a reaction. Big sister, I've been wanting to ask for a long time. Qinglei curiously reached out and touched the pair of white wings. She could not help but ask, are these the wings of some beasts? Do humans grow wings? Is this the special life of the previous generation? Can this fly? If you don't know, then we don't know either. Yin Oshing smiled bitterly and said, anyway, we've been like this for so many years. We're used to it. If it's flying, it can indeed fly. In a normal environment, it can fly very fast. When it's sunny and windy, I'll take it out for a walk and let it fly in the sky. At the same time, it also takes me to fly a few times. Qinglei was enlightened and envious. No wonder Big Sister doesn't feel strange about flying at all. You can say it so frankly. It turns out that Big Sister has flown many times. Yin Nuoshing smiled and did not respond. That was nonsense. When they flew, they disappeared as soon as they flew. They didn't even know if they flew into the starry sky or the void. Moreover, he was obviously talking nonsense just now. After following the carriage group on the main road for a while, Yin Nuoshing, who was pretending to be asleep, slightly narrowed his eyes and sniffed. He smelled the cold air from the ice that hadn't melted for 10,000 years. He lifted the curtain and saw the appearance of the snowy mountain. They were much closer. The sky was covered with the same dark clouds all year round. The cold air seemed to be spreading from the clouds. There seemed to be fewer people around, he said casually. The few people who teased him were no longer there. We just passed an intersection. Those people planned to climb the snowy mountain from the side. The rest of the people who are still on this main road either plan to climb the mountain from the front or start from the back like us. Qinglei stretched and said. Yin Nuoshing silently calculated the time. About 4 hours had passed. The afternoon was almost over, but they still hadn't reached the starting point. This made him confused. Didn't they say that these 2 days were the best time to climb the snowy mountain range? Almost half a day had passed, right? Hearing his confusion, Qinglei couldn't help but chuckle. It's not like that. That sentence means that it's best to set off in these 2 days. It'll probably be evening by the time we get there. It's not suitable to climb the snowy mountain in the middle of the night. So, in reality, the 2 days of the golden period will start from tomorrow. Yin Nuoshing suddenly understood. At this time, the carriage entered a frosty, snowy forest. The earth suddenly changed from an earthy yellow color to a place covered by white snow. The dense forest formed a path. As the mountain range took a turn in front, it was like a bow. On both sides of the path were towering ancient trees covered in white and strange tree species with icicles hanging on their branches. They stood tall in the ice and snow, but their vitality didn't seem to weaken or disappear. There were also some details that showed that they had grown here for hundreds of years, or even thousands of years. The towering ancient trees that were hundreds of feet tall broke through the snow piles at intervals, like long swords with saw teeth. Yin Nuoshing paid attention to the high treetops. Only then did he notice that the sky at this moment was shrouded in thick dark clouds. It was more like evening ahead of time. Only the purple-green sunset was left to prove it. It seemed that there wasn't much that was beyond his imagination. This wasn't an ice field like the North Ice World or the South Ice World, but a snowy mountain in a continent. The terrain was higher and more dangerous. That was it. There was nothing else. It was so ordinary that he suspected that he had come to the wrong place. But according to the direction of the throbbing that day, they should be getting closer and closer. If he wasn't wrong, they should be in this snowy mountain. As for whether it was the periphery or the hinterland, he didn't know. That throbbing didn't come again, and he couldn't locate it a second time. Very quickly, a fork in the road appeared in his line of sight. This large group of horse carriages tacitly changed their paths. One side headed to the side facing Gathering Light City, while Yin Nuoshing and the rest headed to the other side. During this period, Qinglei stuck her head out and focused on something. Yin Nuoxing estimated how much longer it would take before he could get down to stretch his stiff body. They had just entered the fork in the road for less than 10 minutes. There were less than 10 other groups that were walking in front, while his group was at the back. In this world of ice and snow, the creature that looked like a horse but didn't look exactly like one could still run stably, but its speed gradually slowed down. "Stop! We'll get down here." After a few minutes, Qing Lei suddenly shouted, startling the young man who was driving the carriage. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly dispelled his sleepiness. He took a deep breath of the cold air and blew on the face of the little angel, causing it to wake up in a daze. The young man who was driving the carriage didn't ask much. Before he came out, he had been warned by his seniors not to ask about things that he shouldn't ask about. After sending the person to the place, he should quickly come back and don't stay. He had heard these words repeatedly dozens of times. Of course, he knew what to do. In less than 2 minutes after the luggage was unloaded, the young man said goodbye to Qing Lei and turned his horse around. He hurriedly rushed back in the direction they came from. He was far less calm than those seniors, and he didn't want to stay here for even a minute. After watching the 2 carriages disappear from his sight, the big guy finally came back to his senses. "We haven't arrived at the place we booked. Why did they suddenly come down?" Qing Lei was paying attention to the movements around her with rapt attention. An experienced aura emanated from her body, just like a legendary explorer who had far more intuition than ordinary people. At this moment, she suddenly felt something. It seems that the stable period has begun. The big guy's eyes widened. Yin Nuoxing raised his eyebrows and concentrated on sensing the surroundings. His spirit had spread to the extent that it could cover the entire snowy mountain. Even the slightest movement of the wind and grass would be transmitted into his mind. He also saw that the dozens of carriages were galloping towards their destination. No one had suddenly stopped like them. Moreover, it was unusually calm. There was no breath of life. Even when Qing Lei and the others were standing in front of him, he couldn't feel any breath of life. This time, he sensed more carefully. The breath of life emitted from their bodies suddenly disappeared less than an inch away from their bodies. The breath of life disappeared completely, as if no one had ever been here. He looked very carefully. He could see that the faint breath of life swept towards the direction of the snowy mountain, and then disappeared without a trace in the vast white snow. Obviously, a ghost had appeared. As for how it had appeared, the disappearance of that wisp of life aura had no effect on the person. It was just like the breath he exhaled. Even if it disappeared, it would not affect him. That wisp of life aura had only left behind evidence of who had been here before. Now, it was as if something was actively destroying this evidence. And he didn't know whether it was an illusion or not, but he kept feeling that the space was shaking. It was the kind of shaking that made him dizzy. His mind was a little out of control, and he was a little in a trance. He looked at Qing Lei and the big guy. The two of them didn't seem to have the same phenomenon as him. He didn't know how the others were doing. He didn't know if they were the only ones who were in this situation. A weak spiritual restriction and spirit restriction. It's specially used to restrain the spirit. It's not a normal spirit. The voice of the little angel rang in Yin Nuoxing's mind, which made him more vigilant. This was more logical. If there was no reaction even after coming here, then he didn't know what to do. Qing Lei ended her exploration of the surroundings. Normally, the stable period should start after some time. But looking at the current situation, the state of the snow-sealed mountains has already started for some reason. Let's go up from here. Although it's a little more dangerous ahead, we can save some time and catch up with the journey. After all, we only have 2 days. This time, we have to go to the hinterland of the snow-sealed mountains no matter what. Yin Nuoxing and the big guy looked at each other silently. They both saw a ray of light in each other's eyes, which meant, you see, something really happened. The big guy shrugged. Both of them were very experienced. Qing Lei wasn't the only one who saw the state of the snowy mountain. He thought for a while and felt that it was better, so he didn't say anything against it. But when he saw Yin Nuoxing looking around curiously, he couldn't help but say, originally, if we came down from the normal place, that place would be slightly safer. There are no wild beasts and no raging wind and snow. But now it's different. It's very strange. The heaven and earth have calmed down. This is a phenomenon that can only be seen when the calm period has stabilized. We must have noticed it too. But they still chose to get off at the destination. Yin Nuoxing blew into his palm, and the white mist turned into frost. Qing Lei and the big guy turned their heads again. Suddenly, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Could it be that there was something special about this? After a while, he heard Qing Lei laugh bitterly. That's because they're well-equipped. They're willing to spend money and recruit people. A large group of people flock there. They have more people and more strength. They don't care about this little bit of time. And they're fast enough to catch up with the disappearance of the stable period. Yin Nuoxing was very curious about how this 2+1 team survived after 3 years of exploration. There will be a little danger ahead. There will be wild beasts and strange beasts left behind in the snowy mountain. They are very aggressive. The forest is also confusing like a maze. Remember, don't go too far. After saying this, she took the lead and pulled Yin Nuoxing to walk in front. Her excited expression didn't seem like she was going to explore a dangerous place at all. The latter was speechless. However, it was his old habit to be at the forefront. So after a few steps, it became him dragging Qing Lei to walk in front. They stepped into the ice and snow forest next to them. According to Qing Lei's temporary plan, they had to draw a straight line from here to the hinterland. Along the way, they would pass through many dangerous places and might encounter some dangerous creatures. However, they all said that they were used to it and didn't feel afraid at all. This surprised Yin Nuoxing a little. They didn't have a mentality of facing death with equanimity. At most, they had the stubborn drive of not giving up until they achieved their goal. However, speaking of this snowy mountain, Yin Nuoxing slowly raised his head and showed an even stranger smile to the sky. His eyes were shining, as if he was waiting for something. I'm already here. What are you waiting for? Chapter 1224. The snowbound mountains were covered with a veil of mystery. From a normal person's point of view, it was a mysterious area that had not changed for thousands of years. There were many magical and incredible things in it. Well, some of them might be mysteries that people made up to scare themselves. However, there was indeed something hidden there that no one knew about. From the perspective of Yin Nuo, it was even more so. His own observations and his own understanding conflicted greatly with what was happening in reality. From the ancient records of this continent, the snow-sealed mountain range was an exceptionally mysterious and irresistible place for exploration. Even though everyone knew that 1 or 2 teams would die every year, and 1 or 2 famous extraordinaires would be among them, it still exuded a powerful attraction, tempting everyone to go there to explore. In his opinion, this was probably no different from poison. The only difference was that the latter was poison, and the former was a kind of faith. Also, Yin Nuoxing felt that there was something in this sacred mountain that could devour the remaining breath of life, and the creature in front of him that did not look very appropriate, if that thing could still be called a creature. The 4-legged beasts crawling in the snow were covered in scales that were the color of snow mountains. They were probably only the size of an adult human, and the largest of them was only about the size of a black bear. They had black horns on their heads that shouldn't have appeared on the heads of creatures in this world. They looked like magical beasts, but if the energy in the horns was supplemented, the style of the beasts didn't seem right. The abyss death fog. No, it was the power of God's destruction. Yes, it was exactly the same as the aura of the storm belt on the Vesuvius satellite that the little angel sensed. It could probably be considered a special product of this world. Qing Lei and the big guy were very familiar with dealing with this kind of beast. It did not require too much combat power to deal with them. All that was needed was a slightly blunt knife, a slightly faster reaction speed than ordinary people, and some strength to take down such a beast. Puff! The beast, or rather, the demonic beast, that was cut in half by the big guy's machete, exploded into a cloud of dense black ashes as soon as it fell to the ground. The ashes continued to disintegrate into black powder and dissipated with the cold wind. Gradually, the body was left with a pile of white bones as if it had been dead for a long time, and only its bones were left in this world of ice and snow. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Yin Nuoxing's breath turned into frost. They had fought all the way here. These beasts, who were unknown whether they were beasts or demonic beasts, were not very threatening. They moved slowly and had limited attack power, but they were irrational and lived in groups. If one jumped out, there might be 4 or 5 more hiding in the snow. An experienced explorer could deal with a group of them alone. The difficulty of dealing with these beasts was probably not as difficult as dealing with the environment of the snowy mountain. Accompanied by a heavy sound of flesh hitting, an unknown creature that was almost 2 meters long that looked like a cow, a snow leopard, or a pangolin was thrown high into the air. Its snow-white scales scattered in the air like crystals that were hit by the blow. Finally, it crashed heavily into a pile of snow. It was dead in an instant. Its mutated body began to dissipate after a few seconds of stagnation, slowly turning into a pile of bones. Qinglei shook her jade-like feet that were covered by her red boots. After taking a deep breath, she turned around and said to everyone, "After dealing with these annoying fellows, let's rest for a while. We're in a hurry, so we're not in a hurry." The big guy and the 6 little brothers responded energetically. Yin Nuoxing glanced at them when he heard the commotion. He tilted his head and looked elsewhere. He casually raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Those things that surrounded him and the little angel, who knew whether they were wild beasts or magical beasts, suddenly exploded into black ashes, leaving behind a pile of ghastly white skeletons. Shh, be gentle. There's a sudden snowstorm in an area 100 miles away. The little angel reminded in a low voice. This guy's strength was ridiculously strong in this world. A casual move from him could cause a disaster. Although she could see that he was trying his best to restrain his strength, this guy just had to use group attacks. Every attack was a disaster. "I'm trying my best to restrain myself." Yin Nuoxing shook his head helplessly. If he wanted to kill these beasts, he had to control his strength so that it was lighter than pinching an insect to death. He was already used to using his full strength. How could it be that easy to control his strength? The little angel tilted her head and rolled her eyes at him. "If you just fight them one by one, this won't happen. That's too troublesome. It's not efficient to fight them one by one. Is that why you changed the weather 100 miles away dozens of times? Anyway, there's no one there. I only dared to control the energy when I made sure that no one was there." You wanted to say to release the energy, right? Is that right? You destructive maniac. No, I didn't. You heard wrong. The 2 of them whispered in each other's ears. Their faces were full of shock. Qinglei and the big guy were very curious. However, when they thought of their identities as extraordinaires, they thought that they were discussing something that only they knew, so they didn't go near them. Speaking of extraordinaires, Qinglei and the big guy turned their heads and looked at the white bones all over the ground. They would encounter these whether they came here or not. However, they would encounter more here. It was like they had poked a hornet's nest. They dealt with 6 of them and spent some time and energy. Then, Yin Nuoxing and the little angel killed the remaining 56 in seconds. Their cheeks twitched when they saw this. They couldn't help but say in their hearts, "Monsters." As expected of extraordinaires, the 2 of them stopped their excited secret discussion and walked towards them. Yin Nuoxing looked around. "There aren't many of them. Are you guys hurt?" Qinglei giggled and waved her hand casually. "Big sister, don't think that we're just normal people. Even though we're not as strong as extraordinaires, it won't be a problem for us to deal with that nest. At most, we'll be a little tired. We have a lot of experience in dealing with dead beasts. We know their attacking habits and their weaknesses, so it'll be much easier for us to fight them. It won't be as tiring as it looks," the big guy said and scratched his head. "But we won't be as cool as you, Miss Xing." Yin Nuoxing and the little angel exchanged a look. They had seen the name Dead Beast before. Yes, it was in the pile of books they read yesterday. According to the records, they had already existed since the beginning of this life cycle. They were mutated life forms that were born after being corroded and assimilated by some strange energy. They had no intelligence and would only attack any life form that approached them unconditionally. Their bodies were covered in tough scales that could shatter hammers, and the scales could change their appearance according to the environment they were in. They lived in symbiosis with the environment. The state of the dead beasts was death. They were like the mutated bodies of many species after they died. Once they were defeated, aside from their original skeletons, their bodies would turn into grayish-white fog and disappear completely. Legend had it that they came from outer space and left some kind of energy on the continent. As they mutated, they became the familiar dead beasts. Some also said that they were a strange dead creature that had existed since the beginning of time. But in any case, they were a little dangerous, but not as serious as imagined. They would not actively approach places where the breath of life was relatively strong. Even if 4 or 5 people gathered together, the breath of life would be considered strong. They would not actively stay away from places where the breath of life was relatively strong. They were lazy by nature, and the time they spent in hibernation was longer than the time they were active. Moreover, they usually did not go far. The range of their activity was at least a few dozen meters, and the maximum range was only a few dozen miles. Generally, they would only be discovered when explorers broke into their territory. In general, if explorers did not break into their territory easily, those things were like harmless things that had nothing to do with balance, or at most, did not cause any harm to the balance. With the purpose of exploring this world, Yun Nuashing collected a lot of information. That is, the pile of books he read last night, and the few glances he took at this world. When he did not speak or move, Qing Lei and the others thought that he was actually a scholar or someone similar. Now that he rolled up his sleeves and casually killed a nest of dead beasts, his original ferocious appearance was exposed. Then, the admiration in everyone's eyes became even more obvious. In their impression, extraordinaires were all high and mighty. They would not take action unless they were in real danger, and when they did, they would need others to beg them for help before they would reluctantly move their fingers. In general, they were like big shots. In the end, they did not even know whether they had invited an extraordinaire to escort them or a father. The two in front of them did not have such an unbearable image. Instead, they were very enthusiastic in helping them kill all the undead beasts. It was just that the fighting style of this ice spell master was a little beyond their expectations. Logically speaking, those spell masters should be chanting something in a low voice, or moving their fingers, or waving the staff in their hands. Bang! Yin Nuashing knocked over a dead beast the size of a bear with a punch. The sound of the dead beast, tearing through the air and flying backward, exploded in the ice forest, shaking off the ice and snow on the trees. When it flew backward, it dug out a trail on the ground that was 6 meters wide, more than 100 meters long, and more than 300 to 400 meters long. Along the way, it destroyed countless trees and killed countless dead beasts. Now that they had rested for a while, they continued their journey. Not long after they jumped out of the car in advance and entered the ice forest, they were attacked by dead beasts. At first, only 2 or 3 dead beasts emerged from the snow. As they went deeper into the forest, the dead beasts came out in groups. This was all within Qing Lei and the others' expectations. When the calm period began, the dead beasts' time and range of activity would increase. They would wander aimlessly in the ice and snow, randomly choosing the next hibernating spot until they were encountered by other life forms. As they deviated from their original path, they would encounter more dead beasts from here. This was also within Qing Lei's expectations. Now, they encountered the 3rd hibernating dead beast. Bang! There was another sound of an explosion. Yin Nuashing kicked a whole nest of dead beasts away. The snow on the ground was kicked up into the sky. The sky was filled with snowflakes mixed with black and gray particles, as well as scatter bones. It was like a rain falling down. Qing Lei and the big guy faintly put away the scimitar and knife in their hands. They looked at each other, and cold sweat poured down. They did not expect that this big sister was also a violent maniac. Looking at that skillful destruction method, even berserkers were not as violent as her. But wasn't she an ice spell master? Spell masters' bodies were weak. They could be blown away by the wind. Oh, the latter part was a little too much. The spell master's physical quality was not very good, but it was not to the extent that they could be pushed down casually. However, it was impossible for them to reach such a degree of brutality. Those who had this kind of power could easily become famous. Who in this world would dare to provoke them? They were even worried that this big sister and her little sister would be secretly captured by someone to do that kind of strange thing. The 8 of them were covered in cold sweat. The cold wind blew even colder. However, they did not have time to think too much. Yin Nuashing patted her hands and clothes and walked back. They are not very strong. I thought the dead beasts in the snow-sealed mountain range would be strong. In the end, are the dead beasts everywhere the same? They are as brittle as paper. The little angel rolled her eyes. This guy was bragging again, bragging to increase his sense of existence and to prevent others from suspecting whether he was actually a person from this world or not. The problem was that this was a place where they could not even jump out of their own world. Only those who had nothing better to do would think that the person in front of them was from another world. The corner of the big guy's eyes twitched. Cough. Dead beasts. Although they can change their appearance according to the terrain, their defensive power is the same. I guess they have never been beaten to death by someone so violently. The corner of Ching Lei's eyes suddenly twitched. Dead beasts were used to hoe the ground until their bones were turned into ashes. Dead beasts were used as blunt weapons and were swung into big windmills. Moreover, the one in front of her had punches and kicks that were 100 meters long and 10 meters wide. She almost suspected that she had seen some kind of unknown humanoid monster. The ancient information on this big sister's body was to increase strength, right? Hey, it's just strengthening spells and strengthening physical skills. It's nothing. Yin Nuashing laughed to fool around. He turned around and rolled his eyes at a certain little angel. If it wasn't for her always complaining that he would disturb the local weather every time he used his energy, for the sake of world peace. For the sake of maintaining the local weather, he could only rush up and smash like this. The power of divine destruction. The weak aura on these dead beasts was undoubtedly the same as the one on the satellite, which was also the power of divine destruction. When he first found out, he treated them as a big enemy and was ready to use 1/10 of his energy. Then he saw the big guy slashing them into dust. He was stunned for a second. After that, he realized that even if these dead beasts really did have the so-called power of divine destruction, they were still weak and pitifully weak. Mortals could easily kill them. Compared to the other 2 powers of divine destruction, the abyssal death mist and the nirvana element, this third power was just a little brother. It was simply not giving them any face. Don't worry about her. Just treat her like a lunatic. He also rolled his eyes and then looked at Ching Lei and the others. Are we going in the right direction now? We saw so many nests of dead beasts. We just suddenly jumped down from somewhere else. Won't we get lost? Ching Lei shook her head. She took out a map from the big guy's backpack and spread it out. The path of the entire snow-capped mountain range was carved on it. As for the center of the mountain, it was still blank. There were also many obvious markings, but they all started from the other side of the mountain. If there was no accident, that should be their initial destination. Now, they were starting from a brand new place. She drew a line towards the center and drew a mark of a scimitar at the place where they encountered the dead beasts. Yin Nuashing noticed that there were a lot of scimitars on the map, which were obviously the places where they encountered the dead beasts. She raised her head and looked around. She took the map and walked around in a circle, as if she was comparing and confirming something. After a while, she nodded and pointed in a direction. There's no problem. Now let's go that way. Yin Nuashing turned his head. It happened to be the spacious passage that he smashed out with his fist. He was sure that even if there was something in that place, there would be nothing left of it now. The path that we are taking is actually a shortcut. Ching Lei pulled Yin Nuashing forward. As they walked, she said, "In theory, there are a lot of dead beasts on this path. It takes a lot of physical strength to deal with the dead beasts. So, in the end, it's not as simple as the spot that we decided at the beginning. There's no other way today. It takes 2 hours to get from the place where we got off the carriage to the place where we planned to go, and she raised her head and looked at the sky in the distance. It was a lot darker now. The purplish-green light dyed the sky in the distance. This was the scene that Yun Nuoxing saw. Qing Lei and the others couldn't see the sky in the distance. It was covered by dark clouds, but they could tell that the sky was obviously much darker. It was almost night now. If we go there, we won't have the time to climb a mountain. If we climb a mountain now, we can still walk a distance. The calm period will last for 2 days until the day after tomorrow. Before that time comes, we must go to the hinterland and turn back from there. Time was very tight. It would take a lot of time just to go there. They also had to retreat from there before the calm period ended. Just listening to it made the difficulty increase by a lot. Yin Nuoxing's eyes turned and said, "What do you usually do when it's not the calm period? As far as I know, you should be staying in the snow mountain during that time. Go around the hinterland in circles to see if there are any loopholes or explore this snow-covered mountain range." The big guy shrugged. This place was very big, and the difficulty of exploration was not low. The exploration progress was slow. Even if there were 100 elite teams, it would take more than 1,000 years without sleep and rest to fully explore this place. This was the answer that a scholar came up with, and this was the situation that the hinterland was not taken into account. Under Qing Lei's guidance, the group encountered a few more dead beasts that did not pose any threat to the team. They successfully walked to the edge of the outer area. At this moment, they were standing on a huge rock that protruded from the ridge. They looked at the hazy scene in the distance and could not see clearly, as well as a few peaks in the distance. Over there was the hinterland, and there was still a distance of 100 miles away. However, they only had time left for tomorrow's journey. Including entering and exiting, they would have to use half a day's time to walk in. In the remaining time, they could choose to walk around the hinterland for a few hours to take a look. Then, they would have to quickly retreat early in the morning on the last day. Otherwise, they would be completely surrounded by the ice storm in the hinterland. They could only force themselves to endure until the next calm period to successfully come out. Of course, that was under perfect circumstances. Qing Lei also felt very hopeless about the sudden advance of the calm period this time. At most, she hoped that she could stand at the edge of the hinterland of the snow mountain and take a look. Then, she would count the time of the calm period and wait for it to end before rushing out. That's all we can do for today. The big guy sighed. Looking at the sky where they could not continue walking, he shook his head helplessly. He put down his backpack and took out the tent and portable spell lamp. The light of the lamp could not be seen beyond 10 meters away. It was impossible to use it to travel in the dark. Yin Nuoxing pulled his collar and stood on a higher rock at the side. He let out a long breath of white air. He quite liked to see the white air fluttering in the air. The wind is blowing. Even if it's the calm period, there will be gusts of wind and snow at night. We can't continue walking forward. It's easy to get lost in the snow mountain. Qing Lei shook her head to shake off her depressed mood and said, I'm not talking about that. It's nothing." Yin Nuoxing blinked and shook his head. Qing Lei. Huh. Yin Nuoxing and the little angel looked into the distance. In the hinterland of the snow-sealed mountain range, they felt a weak energy wave. It was very weak. It was the weak throbbing of the third type of God-destroyer power. There was indeed something in the snow mountain. Chapter 1225. The power of God's destruction on the surface did not look very good. Its aura was very difficult to identify. If it were not for that Qing something, Yin Nuo planet would never have known that the element of destruction had another name. At the same time, they would also know that the abyssal death fog that filled the entire void was also something like that. Then, a certain little angel, who had nothing to do, placed these two things together and analyzed them. He found that they were indeed partially similar, but it was very difficult to identify them. It was like looking at two completely different buildings on the outside, but when he walked in, he found that the layout was 70% similar. It was the same for this new little brother. But when the three things were put together, something amazing happened. The new divine annihilation power was 70% similar to the abyssal death shroud and 70% related to the element of annihilation. 40% of it was similar to the element of annihilation and the abyssal death shroud, while the remaining three were different from each other. As the abyssal death shroud was notorious throughout the void and could be seen anywhere, it was not difficult to find something similar to it. Yin Nuashing just did not pay much attention to it. The little angel itself was inextricably linked to the abyssal death shroud. It was not difficult for it to find something that was related to it and had a similar feeling. Yin Nuashing tightened his collar to block the cold wind that blew into his clothes. When it saw this, it extended its wings and wrapped him up. Its golden eyes stared unblinkingly at the depths of the snowy mountain. Can you see it? There, that presence, the third type of divine annihilation power, right? Yin Nuashing nodded gently and sighed. It seems that there's a first explanation for the throbbing that day. A brief resonance of the three types of divine annihilation power. He was silent for a moment and nodded. Perhaps that was the case. At least it was a guess. As to whether it was true or not, he would have to go there and verify it. Anyway, it was not the first time his senses had problems. In this place, it seemed that he could not trust his own senses. If he wanted to find out something, he had to go back to the most primitive way and see the truth with his eyes. Those dead beasts are also a mysterious species that has been tainted by the power of annihilation. But they seem to be pitifully weak. All the divine annihilation power that we have seen so far is extremely destructive, but this one seems to be a little too docile. Docile? Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and shook her head. She reached out and stroked her white wings out of habit. It's not just docile, it can be described as weak. I just checked and found that 90% of the power in those dead beasts is the power of divine destruction. However, an ordinary person without any power, a mortal, can easily crush them to death. Didn't they say that the power of divine destruction is a special power of the divine level? I think that statement can be overturned now. The little angel curled her lips. You've only seen the first side. It doesn't mean anything. What if it is sleeping? What if he didn't release any destructive power? If your element of annihilation does not release that destructive power that can tear the balance apart, isn't it just a normal black fog? Yin Nuashing tilted her head and replied with a drawl. But even if the element of annihilation does not have any destructive power in front of you, you can still feel the presence that can shake the balance and the rules. The abyssal death mist is the same. It leaves a trail of black smoke wherever it goes, afraid that something can't see it. Just by existing there and doing nothing, it can make the entire world of order feel heavy. That presence that can disturb the balance of order is a natural existence. Yin Nuashing paused for a moment. Anyway, I think that this newly discovered power of divine destruction is naturally weak. Moreover, it just happens to be similar to the other two types of energy. Maybe it's just a coincidence? All right, I know it's not nice to say this, but I can't explain it. That's all I can think of. She rolled her eyes. It's all possible. But let's not talk about this for now. It's useless to speculate so much. While the two of them were muttering, Qing Lei and the big guy had already set up the tent. The light cold wind was blowing and the gray-green tent kept swaying. Qing Lei breathed a sigh of relief. She waved her hand and shouted, "Big sister, what are you two whispering about over there? It's already set up here. See if one tent is enough for the two of you." Yin Nuashing and the little angel were stunned. The former could not help but say, you set up our tent? Actually, we don't need it. Gods, extraordinaires are very energetic. They don't need to rest much. We'll just set up the ice barrier outside and keep watch. You can use it yourselves." "No." Qing Lei shook her head in a huff. She ran over and pulled Yin Nuashing and the little angel away without any explanation. "We have made arrangement for the night watch. Big sister, you can rest assured." "But Yin Nuashing had just said 2 words when she was slapped and fell into the tent with the little angel. The two of them got up and looked at each other. They saw the confusion in each other's eyes. However, the interior of the tent was quite soft. There was a warm current flowing from the bottom layer that seemed to be made of fur. It was soft. The interior of the tent was not as cold as the outside. It inexplicably reminded him of that cloud. Hiding between 2 clouds, some of the heat of the scorching sun was filtered by the cloud, and the warm light was transmitted to the lower layer. When the warm light shone on his body, he felt lazy just thinking about it. Unknowingly, he felt sleepy. He felt a little sleepy. Snore, it was speechless. Wow, you fell asleep as soon as you came in. How tired are you? The little angel let out a surprised exclamation. It shook its head helplessly and crawled to the other corner of the tent. It lay down and curled up into a ball. This environment was indeed comfortable. It even felt like it was back in its nest, that slow and lazy nest. Outside the tent, Qinglei opened the tent to a gap that was only enough for one eye to see. Seeing that the two of them fell asleep immediately, she gave the big guy a thumbs up. She shouted excitedly and suppressed her voice. It's done. It's done. Big sister and the others fell asleep. That's right. The big guy also gave her a thumbs up. The fur engraved with a warm spell. The profiteer said that it can remind people of the most comfortable time. It seems that he was right. Oh, good stuff. Qinglei exclaimed. How many did you buy? Just one. That thing is limited. It cost a lot of money. I originally planned to exchange it for 2, but I only got 1. I even paid for it. The big guy screamed as he spoke. Qinglei couldn't help but slap her forehead. In the end, they didn't exchange it. Judging from the situation, they probably wouldn't bring it over. What were they going to do tonight? Look at the howling cold wind. They would probably freeze into popsicles tomorrow morning. Then, the two of them kept watch for the first half of the night. After changing shifts with their followers, they hid in their own tents for the second half of the night, shivering. Qinglei scolded the big guy 10 million times. If resentment could cause real harm to people, the big guy would probably be dead. This was the reason why Yun Nuashing saw the two of them with heavy dark circles the next morning. Early in the morning, he faced the sun that was blocked by heavy dark clouds and stretched. Then he saw 2 strange people with dark circles around their eyes coming out of the 2 tents next to him. He was so scared that he almost sprained his waist. So, the 2 of us actually don't need those. Yin Nuashing shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. If he didn't fall asleep as soon as he fell down, he could put a barrier to block the wind and adjust the temperature or something, but it was too comfortable inside. He fell unconscious as soon as he fell down. The stable period didn't leave much time for everyone. Qinglei and the others forced themselves to stay alert and didn't waste too much time. The group immediately headed to the center of the snow mountain. There were still a few stars spinning in Qinglei's mind. She glanced at the wings on the little angel, and suddenly an idea came to her. The latter trembled and stood up with a puzzled expression. However, after looking at the somewhat thin and weak figure of the little angel, well, she guessed that this strange guy couldn't fly them all over. It was better to walk over on foot. It seems that I don't see any other teams. Yin Nuashing looked at the snowy scenery around him. The sky was clear, but it was a little gloomy. There was no wind and no snow. There was not a single person within 100 miles. He didn't even use his soul to sense anything now. If he didn't find the exact destination, there was no way to find anyone. This is a shortcut. This is a shortcut that no one has ever taken before. It's a shortcut that only exists in theory. It's quite a distance from the other 3 paths. Unless one of them gets lost, they probably won't bump into each other. Even well-equipped expeditions won't take this path because there are too many dead beasts to deal with on the way. Oh, theoretically, there are too many dead beasts here, and no one dares to gamble with the lives of an entire team on luck. The 3 paths have been taken by many people, and there are some small things left behind by the predecessors. If you need them, you can borrow them. With this comparison, no one would want to start from scratch. Yin Nuashing responded casually. He suddenly felt something and raised his head. His eyes pierced through the dark clouds and the starry sky, and saw the remains of the sun. He could see a shadow in the fire, a huge shadow. The light illuminated the darkness beside the shadow. He just remembered that since Wei Su's satellite would return to the side of the sun, the light there would illuminate the shadow continent beside it. Well, that was what he thought. However, the shadow continent was shrunk in the shadow of the huge planet. Although he could clearly see a huge cluster of debris beside the planet from this angle, there was still no way to see what exactly was there. I can't see anything. Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh of relief. He thought that he would be able to see something special in this snowy mountain. However, he was able to see that planet. The yellow and red storm belt in the starry sky emitted a light that made people feel uneasy. Creak. The sound of walking in the snow suddenly changed. It was like the sound of shoes touching hard stones, causing Yin Nuoxing to stop his wandering thoughts. He subconsciously lowered his head, thinking that he would see some stones or something. What was half buried in the snow was a piece of brick. It was a grayish-blue brick, and it was quite recognizable with the surrounding snow. It exuded a bone-chilling cold air, which was even colder than the environment of ice and snow here. It seemed that the cold air had been stored for countless years, and it was only released when it was touched and exposed to the air at this moment. There seems to be something down there. The little angel heard the noise and came over to take a look. Then, she called Qinglei and the big guy, who were still in a daze. Come take a look. Yin Nuoxing was even more straightforward. He directly squatted down and reached out to grab the brick. He gently pulled it twice and found that he couldn't move the brick. Just as he was about to pull it out by force, he saw that the edge of the brick was brushed away by his fingers, revealing a layer below. There was something down there that was connected to this brick. This is... Qinglei was stunned when she saw the grayish-blue brick. She frowned and looked like she was thinking about something. She seemed to have some impression of it. He pressed his palm on the brick and released wisps of power from his divine soul. The wisps of power spread along the brick and spread down the snowy ground. Then, at a corner, they rushed in two directions. Then, as if they had encountered a fork in the road, his divine soul power quickly circled around the snowy ground. Before the scattered divine soul power could merge into one, the thing that he had drawn with his divine soul power had already appeared in his mind. Buried in the snow was a huge building complex, like a lost ancient city. The first thought that popped into his mind was, this was a city buried by an avalanche and built in the Holy Mountain. Could it be the legendary Holy City? Well, for the time being, he hadn't heard anything about the Holy City. In the end, what he had drawn was an ancient city swallowed by snow. There is no way to find the same style and decoration of the buildings on this continent. Under the snow, there was a large area equivalent to the size of Juguang City with many broken buildings. The walls and towers had collapsed together. Even the tallest building couldn't penetrate the layer of snow. The magnificent palace walls were like independent plates that had broken away from the constraints of the temple and leaned against the snow. What filled the snow was a large pile of broken bricks and tiles. The side hall with a round top only had a round dome left, but the main body had disappeared. It was like the place where there used to be a pool of water, but now there was only crystal clear snow and ice. Yin Nuoxing felt that he had explored enough. He let the spreading power of the soul stay and cover every part of the ancient city, not letting go of a single brick or tile. He raised his head and smiled at Qinglei and the others. You may not believe it, but I have made a big discovery here. Qinglei, who was still thinking in a daze, couldn't wait any longer. She threw away those thoughts and rushed over at lightning speed. When she saw the blue-gray brick that Yin Nuoxing pressed with his hand, her excitement faded little by little. A brick? She thought for a long time, but could only say these two words. Some vague impressions had already appeared in her mind, but she couldn't grasp the most important information. Yin Nuoxing shook his head. The next scene may be very shocking. You all retreat behind me first. Ah, Qinglei only had time to exclaim. The big guy and the others recalled the terrible destructive power of this extraordinary conjurer yesterday. They trembled a few times and hurriedly retreated. The little angel also pulled the big guy away. She probably knew what Yin Nuashing wanted to do. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath, and the soul power that contained divinity began to emit a weak light. The light with the breath of the gods made the snowflakes that existed in the natural world move. They seemed to have a life of their own, and they could not avoid the weak light. Then, Qing Lei stared and saw that the endless snowfield in front of her suddenly caved in. No, it was not caved in, but the snow in the middle was retreating to both sides, as if they were avoiding some natural enemy. They retreated to both sides like two tsunamis, or the whole snowfield and sea of snow was split into two halves. Then, some huge objects gradually appeared in everyone's sight. Dilapidated fences and dilapidated walls. Ancient ruins recorded the lives that once existed. Qing Lei seemed to have been enlightened, and her mind suddenly became extremely clear. She immediately threw the unbelievable scene in front of her aside and focused on the ruins that kept popping up. She didn't even care that the snow under her feet was slowly sinking. Some memories from a long time ago in her mind gradually collided with the remains of the buildings in front of her eyes and gradually merged. Then, some things were added, and she even recalled a familiar voice in her ears. She had seen these before, not now, not when she lived here. She had seen him draw it, more than once or twice. This is the Lost City? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.